I'd like to call to order the September 23rd, 2024 regular board meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. If everyone who's able could rise and join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to welcome everyone joining us in person this evening and those viewing remotely. I'd like to announce the board held an executive session prior to this meeting regarding personnel matters. Board members, with the agenda before you, are there any changes?
I would like to make a motion. I want to make a motion to move action item 10B to discussion.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion? Well, actually, Scott, are there any problems with that? I'm just clarifying. I am not questioning. I'm just clarifying in terms of sunshine.
No, I mean, it's on the agenda. I think
Okay.
the sunshine's more of a action item issue, I think, is the question.
Understood. Just wanted, before we move further, I just wanted to consult the parliamentarian,
Right.
make sure I have that correct.
In terms of discussion, I'm happy to offer why I made the motion, which is that 3 board members had requested that this item, not the one on the agenda, but that an item be put on the agenda, and it was not put on the agenda. And I think that the thinking was that, oh, we can have a broader discussion, but it's in fact not on the agenda. And the item that is on the agenda is a completely separate item. And so since 3 board members had requested it, and it's not on the agenda, past practice has been if 3 board members request it, it goes on the agenda. So I just thought, well, maybe we could do it this way since it wasn't done when it was initially requested. That's all.
Others?
I just had a question. If we were to move it to information, it would move to information reports. Would it go to the end of the agenda, or would it be?
Typically, yeah, information reports typically come after action items, so it would move to the first item on the information reports.
Okay, so would it become not letter H, or it would take the place of A?
Typically, we bump at the beginning.
Oh, okay. All right.
Ann, did you have a question or comment?
I'm just new to this, and so I'm just processing what the procedurally is happening.
It's not
So
typical.
sorry.
Other questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I think, because I seconded it, I think that what it allows the board to do is still consider the agenda item fully without being asked to make a decision about it in particular. And were there concerns with that agenda item, it would not get thrown either into limbo, it wouldn't be voted down or up. It allows it to be modified, I think, in a way that can incorporate more input from the public without having to try to modify a document at the table. So that's my reason for supporting that information item as an information item.
Understood.
And just for I guess for Ann and anybody else who wants to know process, someone could, after all the discussion, make a motion to put it as an action item, just like it is now, and then it could be voted on. So this is not a permanent thing if it doesn't need to be, but anybody can make a motion to do that as well. I just made the motion to have it go to a discussion before and instead of the action item. That way we don't have the pressure of voting yes or no, we get to actually talk about it. So, but it could be put back on as action if the board voted that way.
So I'm going to actually clarify. So we did receive a request regarding an agenda item, and it has not been refused to be added to any agenda. But because this particular item was prepared and ready And that was the direction that was given to the administration at the end of our last meeting to continue that process. And it completed a little bit sooner than expected. And so that agenda item was ready. The reason I will take responsibility, I recommended that it be placed on as action because my understanding of the new sunshine law and qualifications are that we no longer can move something to action as a voting item from information. And we've talked about this at several meetings for board members that have been on for a longer period of time. It's been made that way because the public has a right to know when we're voting on something. And so movement to action is not permissible under the new changes, is my understanding. Mr. Etter, would you like to clarify?
So do you mean that something that was originally on as a discussion item,
Correct.
but not something that was originally on as an action item during the course of the meeting went to a discussion item, and then depending upon the discussion went back to an action item?
No, I'm saying if an item is placed on as information primarily, we cannot then vote on that item. We cannot move it to action and vote on it at that meeting because the public has not been appropriately notified that it was a voting matter.
And
Because
that-
you just said that we could move it to discussion and then still potentially vote on it tonight. And
Because it was
potentially,
already on the agenda. Is that correct, Scott? Yeah.
right, which is why it was put on the agenda that way. And the intent was not to remove any kind of discussion. The alternative approach is that we are able to postpone or table a action item. And so the intent of putting on as action was if there were problems, questions, or issues with an endeavor, a contract, or otherwise, we have said at times, we're going to postpone this item. We would like the administration to answer more questions, make changes to a contract. We had that happen just recently. Dr. Miller wanted changes to a contract, and so we had that happen. So there wasn't an intent to not allow us to not vote. We can always not vote on an item. That's always a possibility.
Yeah, no, it's just that we had requested it to be put on for the RFP idea to be put on as a discussion item. It was not. And there's nothing about the RFP discussion item. It's just a contract to vote yes or no on an action item as a contract. So that's a very different item on the agenda than a discussion item.
I'd like
Go ahead.
to take, I'm one of 10, but when I was asked kind of what my thoughts were, we've gotten a lot of emails, but so it was before those emails. And so my understanding from previous public comments, which I found very compelling, was that there was an imperative to act quickly. And so my concern was a delay, not because I want to get something through, but because I felt like it was a compelling reason. And I saw the contract, and I'm not an expert in this area, but I found her compelling. And so I wanted to have it on as a vote so that we could, if people felt like we discussed it enough, actually be able to vote on it. And so I was of the perspective that put it on and then open it to discussion. Again, I had not gotten emails. I'm still processing all that information, but there have been such powerful commentary that I didn't really want to wait 2 weeks if we felt like the contract was compelling. And I looked at her book, and so I think I will then not blame it on leadership. I asked also, I'm one of 10, to put it on the agenda. So that provides some context, I think.
Yeah, and I would definitely agree with Ann on that, because if, like Dr. Bader says, if afterwards we want more time to administration to answer anything, we could at that time say we could table it. But if we have very compelling argument to do it and we want to vote on it so we could move this along, because this was such an important conversation that the public wanted, I did not want to delay further. So I think I like it being an action item so that we could vote on it if we feel compelled to. If we don't and we think we want more answers, we could always table it like we did last time. So that's why I had also agreed that it become an action item.
I just want to point out real quick, thankfully, we're in one of those interesting weeks where we have another board meeting next Monday as well.
Correct.
So it's not waiting a full 2 weeks. If we do table something, we can take action next week if we need to.
Yes.
So we don't have the full 2 weeks like normal. So it is a shorter time span between now and our next meeting.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, this is a Robert's Rules terminology thing. Tabling sends the thing into limbo. Postponing until such time as is, I think, what we actually mean.
Postponing was the term that I would
That
use.
is the-
Dr. Krivikort, it's a slip
Yeah,
of the tongue
right.
and familiarity, no
Yeah.
harm, no foul.
Yeah, I just want to
Yes.
make sure that we're all on the same page.
I
about
was
that.
aware and
Yes,
looked that up.
I know. I heard you. I just want to reiterate.
Great.
Yep.
Okay. Any further? Yeah.
Just so, this is an action item, just so I'm clear, does not preclude us from discussing the possibility of other steps that we might want to either add to it or, basically, it's an open discussion once we get to that item. Is that-
Typically, absolutely it does, and I, as the chair, have no intent to squash any kind
Okay.
of discussion. So that was the conversation I've had with leadership had with every single board member.
Yep.
Who were apprised in advance that it was going to be put on as action with the possibility of multiple pathways forward after it was open as a motion.
Just to clarify, on the agenda is a yes or no vote for the contract that you see in the agenda. That's the vote on the agenda.
Correct, it
Just to
is.
clarify.
I'm sorry, this is still so new to me. So if it is yes or no on the vote, but we can still, is the right word table it?
Postpone.
Postpone, sorry.
Yeah. We can postpone
So-
it indefinitely. We can
So it's
postpone
really
it to a
not
future
yes,
meeting.
it's yes, no, or table.
Well, that
This is
depends.
an information
Yeah.
question.
It depends, because
not
somebody
a
would have to
position.
make a motion to do that, and then it would have to be seconded, and then a majority of the board would have to vote yes to that.
Correct.
Yeah, so that's, things would have to happen in between what, yeah, but I'm assuming you already knew that.
The way you framed it, I thought it was yes or no, but then that was following a conversation where I thought we could, and the word is postpone.
The majority of the board would have to move and approve to postpone it.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Yes.
And so when the time comes and a motion will be made, and if the motion that's read is the motion that's in the agenda, then someone can amend or change the motion, and the board votes on that, and then that becomes the new motion. Cool.
I would say, Peter, with the new Sunshine Act, to the extent that the motion itself is close to this particular motion, I think, in substance,
Yeah.
then I think I wouldn't have an issue with it. But if it's a completely different motion as a result of the amendment, I think the new Sunshine Act, or the comparatively new Sunshine Act, doesn't give you unfettered ability to have a blanket amendment.
But you would agree that postpone until such time as.
No issue with that whatsoever.
Exactly, right.
That's not impacted by the Sunshine Act.
No.
And I just wanted to say, I wasn't framing the agenda item in any way. I was saying what is currently on the agenda is a yes or no vote. That is what is currently on the agenda.
The
Yeah.
discussion, whether it occurs as part of the agenda item where it currently is on the agenda, conceptually, to me at least, would be no different than the discussion if the motion that's on the floor right now passes. You're still going to have a discussion one way or another, and I don't see, based upon what Amy just said, how or why there would be limits on the discussion irrespective of where this agenda item ends up.
Yeah, and I wasn't assuming there would be limits. I just know that procedurally within Robert's rules, there are discussion items and there's action items, and they're different. And so I just thought it would be an elegant way to just make that happen through Robert's rules. But again, I just made a motion. People, they should do what they think is the right thing to do. I'm just saying that I was never assuming that anybody was trying to squash conversation. That's not where I'm coming from.
Anything further? Is this required to be a roll call?
I
Probably.
think we'll need a roll call, but I think you need comment too.
Oh, correct. Do we have any public comment on this particular motion about moving the agenda item within the agenda? Online? That's okay. No, okay. So without public comment, can we please take a roll call vote?
Can we read what we're voting on?
Sure. Did you happen to jot something down, Lynn?
Yeah. Ms. Brandt made a motion to move action item 10B to information discussion. Dr. Buck seconded the motion.
Okay.
Ready for a vote? Dr. Anderson?
No.
Dr. Bader?
No.
Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Cravacor?
No.
Dr. Demo?
No.
Ms. Oh, she's out, I'm sorry. Mr. Colby?
No.
Dr. Miller?
No.
Okay. Motion has failed. Okay.
And we do have to do a roll call.
Yeah, I thought so. I was pretty sure, but I wanted to make sure. Okay. Are there any additional changes requested on the agenda? Okay. With that, I will ask the secretary to do a roll call of members for the minutes.
Dr. Anderson?
Here.
Dr. Bader?
Here.
Ms. Brandt?
Here.
Dr. Buck?
Here.
Dr. Cravacor?
Here.
Dr. Demo?
Here.
Mr. Colby?
Here.
Dr. Miller?
Here.
Thank you. I'd like to now move on to communications. We'll have Mr. Johnston share his superintendent update.
Thank you, Amy. We have known for a long time that our art and design department is outstanding. Now the Pennsylvania Art Education Association knows it too. The association recognized the department with its Outstanding Visual Arts Community 2024 award for the first time. Statewide, 43 districts received the award. The full story is on the district website. Congratulations to all of our dedicated art teachers out there. Thank you for everything you do to inspire our students' creativity and build their knowledge of art and design. I'm also pleased to report that the Equity Office Fall Family Fun Festival was a huge success on Sunday. Families filled the high school cafeteria and gym to have a great time, enjoying food, craft making, relay races, games, and socializing together. Thank you to the Equity Office leadership and staff and student volunteers for all they did to connect with the community. So thank you. That's it.
All right, thanks very much. I'm pleased to introduce Maya Dombrowski. Is that close? Yes. Awesome. As our new student representative to the board starting this year. While we don't have any official student updates this evening, we're eager to anticipate your insights and your perspective on any discussions. Please feel free to participate as you wish and raise your hand and we'll be gladly recognized. You're welcome. Next up on the agenda, we typically have legislative updates, but Jackie Huff is unable to join us this evening, so we'll forego that today. Following that is Center Region Council of Governments Liaison Report. Gretchen or Peter, do you have anything to share?
Peter? I don't have a report either this.
All right. Oh, sorry, I had my mic off. Apologies. So moving on, we now have time for public comment. Each individual will be allotted up to 3 minutes for items related to board business that are not a consent or action item this evening. For those items, public comment will be held just prior to voting on that item. Do we have someone here to make public comment on a non-action item?
Jennifer Black, Half Moon Township. I just wanted to give kind of an update about what all we have been finding out from the district about things going on during Abby's last few months. I had emailed the board saying that I was asking to find out a timeline, and I did receive that timeline, and so I just wanted to update about that. On Wednesday, September 18th, we received a list of all of the teacher and guidance counselor interactions Abby had in March through May. We emailed the guidance counselor and others on September 16th for this information. We were told multiple people were needed to provide input for this email, and so it took 2 days to compile information and get back to us. And as I read through the accounts of the last few months of my daughter's life and the signs that people were seeing at school, I was really overwhelmed by sadness and anger. Sadness that she was going through all of this and I had no idea, and anger that no one felt it was necessary to involve Abby's parents or Abby's outside therapist in any of this. Didn't feel it was necessary to discuss the matters with us or even let us know that they were occurring. It angers me that it took 2 days to compile a list of events that should have been compiled in real time as they were happening and documented so that somebody could have intervened and said, this kid is not okay. So the list that I received was March 25th, Abby and her friends visited with Suzanne Thompson near the end of the school day to discuss cutting. With the permission of Abby, her friends were released after they shared their overall concerns. Suzanne met with Abby one-on-one, and then Abby went to band. On March 26th, Suzanne had a follow-up meeting with Abby to check in with her. The meeting was followed by a phone call from Suzanne to Jen. I want to point out that March 26th was the last time Abby had a one-on-one meeting with her guidance counselor. April 2nd, we emailed Suzanne to let Abby know, or to let her know that Abby hadn't opened up and we were concerned about her. We asked if she could check in on her. And Suzanne responded she would touch base later that week. April 3rd, Suzanne conducted an informal check-in with Abby as part of the anxiety group. Suzanne and Abby participated in the group each subsequent 6 school days, so once a 6-day cycle. Suzanne shared that Abby participated appropriately and appeared engaged. So the check-in that she performed was one informally while in group with others. Early May is when Abby had the interaction with the German teacher and refused to, I'm sorry, I skipped something out of order, sorry. April 9th, while in the cafeteria, Suzanne witnessed a kiss while talking with Emily, the dean of students. Emily addressed Abby and her peer after other students were dismissed from lunch.
Ms.
Emily
Black?
told, yes.
Yeah, I'm afraid we're going to have to hold to our 3 minutes
Okay,
this
that's fine.
evening. Thank you. Do we have others here for public comment for items not related to a consent or action item on the agenda? Do we have anyone online? No. Okay. Okay, thanks.
Hi, Marley Wong, Ferguson Township Elementary. I would like to cede my minutes to Jen Black.
That's not something we typically do.
Yeah, I don't think that that's it.
Excuse me? Each person has 3 minutes under the district's established rules.
And can the board actually, all of you, please look at the person who's speaking out of respect?
I will note that personnel are not typically to be named specifically.
Okay, I'm going to continue with the list. When you finished number 5? Okay. All right, on April 23rd, Abby was in the bathroom with a peer on this day and witnessed an interaction between classmates. Unfortunately, we can't share specifics involving what may have happened between and among other students and whether there were any disciplinary or other consequences. Early May, I believe the German teacher shared with you his concerns about Abby wearing headphones in class and how this was uncharacteristic for Abby. May 8th, Abby's English teacher discussed concerns about Abby being withdrawn and more quiet than normal. At the team meeting, it was discussed about having Suzanne talk with Abby.
Okay, I'm sorry, we cannot name personnel by name.
The guidance counselor talk with Abby. However, after the meeting, the English teacher had an opportunity to quietly check in with Abby one-on-one at the start of class. The English teacher expressed concern about a drop in grades, but more importantly, in Abby as a person, and to see why she was being extra quiet in class. It was shared that Abby smiled and did not say much, if anything, when the teacher checked in with her. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else here in person to make public comment on an item not related to consent or action item?
Eva George, Ferguson Township, formerly Patton Township. At the last school board meeting, I attended and related several stories that came to light regarding behavioral patterns by certain actors at the Park Forest Area Middle School. Behaviors that left children and families feeling unsupported and disenfranchised. The National School Climate Center, under the heading of Interpersonal Relationships, notes, safe, caring, participatory, and responsive school climate fosters greater attachment to school and provides the optimal foundation for social, emotional, and academic learning. The disturbing pattern of behaviors and lack of consequences for these behaviors could be construed as a direct factor in creating negative school climate. Perceived negative school climate and pattern of behaviors must be addressed in order for change to occur. I will reiterate my statement from the last time I attended that any review of practices mean nothing without meaningful action. Having worked in a union setting as a manager and dealing with questionable actors, I realize it is difficult to weed out and remove this type of person or behavior. However, it is not impossible. But this would call for actionable consequences and documentation by a direct supervisor. And if the supervisor is unwilling to act on these situations when brought to their attention by parents and students alike, they too are neglecting their duties to keep our students safe and in a positive socio-emotional environment. This positive environment is essential to the mental health and care of our students, our children, so that they feel supported, ready to learn, and grow to their future. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right. None? Okay. With that, we'll move on to the consent agenda. This includes several items that we will address in a single motion for approval. To facilitate any questions or discussion, we'll go through each category individually. First up, the consent agenda is approval of minutes. Any questions or corrections? Okay. Moving on to finance personnel, we have a copy paper bid, an agreement for some transportation, and a variety of other small contracts. Any questions or discussion on anything from finance and personnel? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to instructional programs. We have some purchases for the CTC Center and a research proposal. Any questions with these items? Yeah, Debbie.
I don't have any questions on the research proposal. I just wanted to comment that we all read it it seemed really interesting, and it seems like it could be really helpful to students.
Yeah.
So thank you for the research proposal in case our person is here online listening.
Yeah, and absolutely. And they're working specifically with some students in our district, which we really appreciate their expertise as well. Yes, Peter.
Yeah, just I want to give a special thanks to Ben Morden for responding very quickly to some questions I had about the agenda item, and I just want to give him a shout out because he's great.
He is, indeed. All right. Anything else on instructional programs? Okay. Our last category is physical plant. We have some parking lot refurbishment, some change orders for lighting, and some of our routine contracts.
Question.
Yes. Carly?
So basically, the change order is an addition to, it was just an addition. Like these two are not really changing it, you're just adding to it after we've realized the soil was not as compact. So that's just adding. Okay. Because just, I thought, you know, when I saw the balance of it, at first I thought this was an improvement. But anyway, once I did the math, I realized that it's an addition to, and I just wanted to clarify that. That's all.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thanks, Mike. Any other questions from the physical plant items? Okay. Seeing none, I'd like to welcome a motion to approve the consent agenda, items 6 through 9 as presented.
So moved.
Clever
Okay.
That's okay.
That's been moved and seconded. Any last questions or discussion that was neglected? All right. Any public comment on our consent agenda items? Okay. Board members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay? Okay, the consent agenda has passed. Next up, we have action items. We're going to start with agenda item 9A, a motion to approve the 2024-2025 PSBA officer elections. These are shown in attachment 9A. Do I have a motion?
So moved. Miller?
Colby, second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Any questions or discussion on this item? There's not really much to discuss. I think they're all unopposed individuals, and we appreciate their service to the PSBA. It's a challenging, many of them serve in school boards already, and then they serve as officers for the State School Board Association. So we appreciate their contributions. Any public comment on this item? All right, then we'll have board members, those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those did I say opposed? I said in favor.
No, you said
sorry. Huh?
You said it.
You're good.
Okay, I'm sorry. I gave blood today. I'm a little off kilter. Any opposed? Okay, that item is passed. Agenda item 9B is a motion to approve consultation agreement with Dr. Terry Erbacher to provide an external review of the school district policies and procedures related to suicide prevention, screening, assessment, intervention, and postvention, as we have discussed at previous meetings. This is shown in attachment 9B. Do I have a motion?
10B.
Oh, I'm sorry, 10B. Yes, there's a typo on my sheet. Sorry. Yes, it's item 10B. Thank you, Scott.
Anderson, so moved.
Clever second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Before we start questions or discussion, there's some information that the district's going to share. I'd also like to just review briefly with all of us how we led up to this point. For some time, there's been both community and district discussion regarding this matter. And in late August, the administration worked to identify a resource of the desired external review for the external review process as discussed. We heard, as Ann mentioned, many compelling comments from community members on August 19th regarding their support for this effort. After that meeting on August 28th via email, Mr. Johnson provided the board a list of the numerous experts he was making inquiries with, some of whom were suggested by board members, others from community members, or sourced through research by the administration. While the process was ongoing, the administration presented an update to the board at our September 9th meeting. On the feedback from an internal they provided an update with feedback on an internal debriefing process that had occurred regarding the tragic student death by suicide in May. That report also contained information regarding the administration's efforts in identifying a provider for this review, including a list of areas under consideration as focus for in-depth evaluation. And so before us tonight, that has been completed, and Mr. Johnson and the administration will give us a recommendation for consideration.
So initially, we were unaware of anyone who provided this type of external review, which is the reason that the memo that we provided at our last board meeting contained an external review or an advisory council. At that particular moment in time, we were also looking into actually other external reviews or people that could do this. So we took the opportunity to reach out to experts in various sources, including community members. And while there are not easily identified organizations or consultants who specifically conduct external reviews, we were able to identify and connect with a diverse group of academic scholars, researchers, practitioners who were able to engage with us on this discussion. For each provider interviewed, and that would have been myself and Jonathan, and in some cases, Stephanie, who are sitting before us, we provided them with a brief historical synopsis of the events surrounding Abby's death, including information about our other suicides within the district over the last 4 years, community involvement, and the CDT article about bullying in the school. It was explained that district's goals of an external review would include the evaluation of the district board policies, procedures, administrative protocols regarding suicide prevention, screening and assessments, intervention and postvention, particularly in the context of the recent death by suicide. In an effort to be transparent, topics discussed, areas of exploration, and factors for selecting a provider included their background and expertise in this area, specifically their knowledge of K-12 schools, their field of experience in dealing with school-age students and suicide, their availability to provide these services in a timely manner. Some of the researchers were not available this immediately. There was a sense of urgency to this, and we wanted somebody that could get boots on the ground as soon as possible. The manner in which we could provide them, which they could provide us the information, whether in person versus remote, given that these organizations were across the country, including Pennsylvania, all of them said they would do it remotely. Their experiences with K-12 public school systems was important. Their knowledge of school-based mental health services and support. Their experiences in conducting an external review. So we wanted someone with some experience in that area. Their willingness to and ability to engage with a variety of stakeholders, including students, parents, teachers, staff, and administrators, and the ability to keep that information confidential and processes for doing so. Their willingness to report findings to the board rather than just administration to increase that level of transparency. And basically how they would go about approaching their external review. What steps would they would take, and providing us with the information that we need. Who would they go in contact? Who would they interview? What kind of documents we would be seeing, and so forth. So we landed on one particular individual who Jonathan is going to speak to as far as their background and their experience.
Sure. So just a little bit of a reverse timeline as far as steps. So over the last several weeks, Kirsch Johnson and I reached out to individuals and organizations that specialize in suicide prevention and related services. Our communication outreach focused on assessing their willingness to conduct external reviews of the district's response and our mental health services. We spoke to 11 experts, practitioners, and researchers in the field of suicide. Their responses that we received were varied. Some of the individuals or organizations did not respond to our inquiry. Some indicated that they did not do that type of consulting work, and a few indicated that by their responses and expertise had the most potential to assist the district. Based on these responses, Kurtz and I met with 4 consultants who we anticipated could help the district. After discussing the 4 providers, Mr. Johnson and I consulted with our Director of Student Services, Stephanie Beaver, to my right, who began serving in the district after the tragedy. With input from Ms. Beaver's expertise, the team is recommending that Dr. Terry Erbacher conduct an external review. In determining Dr. Erbacher to be the preferred candidate, the administration found Dr. Erbacher's knowledge and scholarship in the area of suicidology to be compelling, including her co-authorship of the textbook Suicide in Schools, a practitioner's guide to multi-level prevention, assessment, intervention, and postvention. Her co-authorship of developing comprehensive school safety and mental health programs, an integrated approach, and her contributions to an after a suicide, a toolkit for schools by the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention and the Suicide Prevention Resource Center, Education Development Center. In addition to the noteworthy scholarship, Dr. Erbacher has worked in other Pennsylvania school districts, and our recommendation was further bolstered when 2 of the 4 consultants we met with recognized and endorsed Dr. Erbacher as a leader in the field. Read her bio. Dr. Erbacher, PhD, is a certified school psychologist, licensed psychologist in Pennsylvania. She has practiced as a school psychologist in Delaware County Intermediate Unit since 1999 and was the core school psychologist faculty member at the Philadelphia College of Osteopathic Medicine in 2007 to 2020. She began her private practice in 2014 to be better able to serve schools and communities nationally and now internationally. Dr. Erbacher has a vast experience as an author, distinguished speaker, consultant, and guest expert in the media, including NPR. Dr. Erbacher's expertise focuses on crisis management, trauma, PTSD, school mental health, threat assessments in school, suicide prevention, and risk management, conflicted grief and loss. She has written extensively on the topics in book chapters, journal articles, and newsletters, and is a health contributor to Philly.com. She is a lead author of the important and innovative text, Suicide in Schools, as I mentioned prior. Among her many board roles, Dr. Erbacher is a past president of the Philadelphia chapter of the American Foundation of Suicide Prevention, past chair of the Delaware County Suicide Prevention Task Force, and has served as a clinical advisor to Survivors of Suicide Incorporated, and is the executive committee of the Pennsylvania Youth Suicide Prevention Initiative. She currently serves as the crisis committee chairperson for the Association of School Psychologists of Pennsylvania, is on the National Board of Advisors for the Suicide Prevention Alliance. Dr. Erbacher has been active in enactment for legislation, including Act 71 and Act 18 in Pennsylvania. Dr. Erbacher serves as a subject matter expert in the Pennsylvania Commission for Crime and Delinquency, School Safety and Security Committee work group to develop both Act 18's trauma-informed care model approach plan, as well as Act 18's threat assessment guidelines. Her passion for helping children in crisis and training schools and mental health professionals has led to her receiving multiple awards for her service to the community, including those for the survivors of suicide, the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, the Delaware County Intermediate Unit. Dr. Erbacher has received commendation for her service to the Delaware County Council and has previously been named Pennsylvania School Psychologist of the Year. She earned her bachelor's degree in psychology from Hofstra University and from Temple University receiving your master's degree and PhD in school psychology. The administration is making the recommendation requesting approval for the contract with Urbach Consulting Associates to allow Dr. Urbach to promptly initiate an external review of the district's response to the student's death by suicide and an evaluation of the district's mental health services. Thank you.
Thanks, Jonathan. Anything else from administration to present? Okay. With that, I'll open it up to questions from the board or comments. Dan? Go ahead, Dan.
I'm curious. I just wanted to understand the scope of like who's selecting what students she's going to interview, what staff she's going to interview. How are we going through that process?
So we would work with her as well in identifying those people. Through the interviews, she will get information, whether it's from the parents or the counselors or the teachers of people that are pertinent to the event in question, to make sure she does a thorough investigation.
And then just to follow that up, any data or information she needs, we have the full support of the administration that they're going to provide that data?
Correct.
Okay.
Ann? Oh, or you're not ready?
I'm not ready.
Okay, that's fine. Debbie, did you, oh, I forgot. Yeah, would you like to?
Fine. I just wanted to say thank you to Mr. Johnson, Mr. Bucher, and Ms. Beaver, because I feel like they have worked diligently in good faith to follow what we asked them to do and what the community has been asking us to do over the last month. At the last board meeting, it was clear that there was support from the board and from the community for an external review. The board and the community were aware that Mr. Johnson was looking for providers, was speaking with people, and I feel like if there was a concern about the process, that could have come up earlier. In my opinion, what's already been done really follows a lot of the procedures we'd follow for an RFP, because in this particular situation, I'm not expecting people to come out of the woodwork and just apply to do this. I think we would have to go out and seek individuals, which means we'd be asking the exact same individuals that they've already spoken with to apply. In my opinion, we seem to have a very qualified individual who's ready and able to do the work. So I would like to see us move forward. I don't feel like the RFP is necessary at this time. I'd be happy to talk more about the scope of practice if people have questions about that. I appreciated Dan's question. You know, it's important that the consultant has the ability to speak to whomever she feels she needs to speak to, and she has the support of the administration and the board to do that. Some of that information will be talking about personnel, and we know that that has to remain confidential. And so I do think the community needs to be prepared to know that you're not going to get all of the results of whatever gets done, no matter how we do this process. Some of the information may not be able to be shared because it may involve personnel, and that has to remain confidential. So I just want to make sure that we're all having appropriate expectations for what we can and can't get out of this process. But anyway, I want to say thank you for your work. I think that you've identified an excellent candidate, and so I look forward to the possibility of this individual getting to work so we can start to get some answers for our community. Thanks.
Thanks, Debbie. Yeah, Carlene?
Oh, I just had a question. When you said, when you interviewed a lot of the consultants, they said that they were all only wanted to do it virtually. Is that one of the?
Okay. Most of the companies, I mean, most of the people are out of state. Okay. And so given, you know, COVID, a lot of people are working Zoom. And when talked to especially two of the providers that we talked to, they said they would do Zoom. And plus, a lot of them have their individual jobs and responsibilities that they're also trying to do, which, like I said, they're trying to make a living. This is not their primary gig. This is something that they do on the side. So finding people that come here and actually do the interviews was somewhat difficult. Yeah.
Okay. And my second point that I wanted to make is that I agree with a lot of the stuff that Deb just said. So I just wanted to reiterate that I do agree with what you just said.
Gretchen?
So I had prepared something, so I'm just going to read what I've prepared. And I will say before I start this that at the last meeting, it became apparent that, in my opinion, that the board needed to start to be involved in the process. So the timing was, that's where it came up from. It was an organic timing. It wasn't anything other than that. So, okay. So what I had thought that the board's request was for the external review was two parts. One was before the death by suicide, which so far I've not seen anything about, and then after the death by suicide. So I'll break up my comments into what I thought that the board's request was, which is pretty different than what is in the agenda memo, which is why I thought I should elaborate. So what I thought we were looking to gain from before the death by suicide is an investigation of the events leading up to the SCASD student's death by suicide. This would include things such as records pertaining to the student, for example, emails, meeting notes, documentation of communication with the student's teachers who brought concerns about the student to the counselor and or any other district personnel, documentation of any disciplinary events related to the student, documentation of any communication with the parents of the student, and district responses or lack thereof to these communications. Additionally, when the district knows that a student has experienced hospitalization for a suicide attempt, as did occur in this particular case, there must be a return to school plan in place for that student. This type of transition plan is important due to what we know about contagion, the contagion effect. Two, we need to make sure that nothing is omitted from the review, including bullying. The internal review did not find bullying to be a factor in this case. However, we do not know what conclusions an external review might find. If any criteria at all are omitted from the review, then we are not getting a complete picture. So we don't know what was asked of the consultants, so we don't know what was asked to be omitted. Of utmost importance is the timing of all documentation. A timeline of events and communications with the district's responses or lack thereof must be included in order to gain an understanding of where within the district anything was missed or left unaddressed. Again, this would include disciplinary action regarding the student, emails containing concerns from teachers, counselors, district administration, etc., safe to say reports, and from the student's family. There was no timeline in we had an exec session and there was no timeline provided to the board at that time. So after the death by suicide. So those are the things that it's sort of like an investigation into within the organization what happened or didn't happen that is related to this death by suicide. After the death by suicide is where I will go now. A thorough what I thought the board was requesting. A thorough deep dive study and analysis of district response to the family of the student who died by suicide, the community, and to the media. A thorough inventory and audit of what mental health resources, policies, and practices the district currently has in place. We must look at what we currently have in order to determine where we could have done better. This has nothing to do with blame, rather in order to do what is best for students. There is simply no way to know how or to what to improve if we don't know what we have now. And also the fact that just because the district has the resources doesn't mean that all students qualify to benefit from that resource. So it's also not appropriate to just say, oh, we have all these resources, but then if the students who need them aren't getting them. And so a review could look into making sure that the services that are needed, the student gets, even if on paper they're not qualified to get. So a very thorough exploration of that. Recommendations by the organization or individual hired to conduct the external review regarding any changes or additions the district could or should make regarding mental health resources and responses. A report provided to the board at a public meeting of the findings from the review. Interviews with students who are willing with parental consent individually and or in groups as the consultant sees fit. Without directly hearing from the students, we have an incomplete picture. And I know that there was a change made to the contract that's on the agenda saying interviews any students, comma, if any. So I thought this is really a piece that's been missing the entire time, is talking to the students who were friends with Abby, knew what was going on. And so far there was an opportunity on paper for them to talk, but they went into the library and didn't talk. So we really need to hear from them. We have to get this right. We have to get this right because we are talking about the life and death of our students. There is no other task more important than the safety and survival of our students. To the argument that the school district cannot be responsible for suicides, my response is that while this statement alone is easy to argue as being true, there are indeed a plethora of mechanisms available within the organization of the school district that alone or aggregately have the potential to make a difference in the life of a student contemplating death by suicide. Although we will never know what could have made a difference or what could make the difference for a future student contemplating death by suicide, we must do everything possible within our power as school board members to ensure that this never happens again. The most effective way to make sure that we get this right is to conduct an RFP process so that we are able to choose the best possible organization or individual to conduct the external review. An RFP process would be transparent so that the community, through the CAC for Health and School Safety and or a subcommittee of the board, could be involved, 1, in developing the criteria to be included in the RFP, 2, creating a rubric for scoring and scoring the RFPs once they are received, 3, a transparent process for the CAC and or board subcommittee to recommend which organizations or individuals the consultant should be interviewed by the committee, 4, a recommendation of the organization or individual to the board to conduct the external review, a public discussion by the board setting a budget for the external review. So the board so far has not provided any idea to the administration of what kind of budget it wants to put into this review. And so if there are budget constraints in that lens of who to choose, then we're not even sure if that matches up with what the majority of the board would want. Tonight's agenda item about the external review contract states clearly that the interviews and selection process were conducted behind the closed doors of the superintendent and a superintendent of secondary. We have no idea what the criteria were for those selected to be interviewed, their credentials, what questions were asked by the superintendent, the budget for the review, or what areas they specifically asked to be included in or omitted from the review. We have not been privy to any of the content of the responses provided by those interviewed. In other words, we know nothing about why those chosen to be interviewed were chosen, what questions were asked, or why those questions were selected. I will say the superintendent did speak a little bit about that tonight. That was not available to us any time prior to this. And so in terms of why I wrote what I wrote, that's why. So there was a little bit offered tonight. What questions were asked or why those questions were selected, what the responses were, which of those interviewed provided a potential contract to the district, or what services were included or not included in any contracts received by the district. Furthermore, we don't know what the cost estimates were. If this is not done well, the community will lose trust in the district. The community members who we have been hearing from, and I will say so far we've gotten 35 emails about this in less than 24 hours. That is, in my 9 years on the board, we have not received that many emails on one topic other than COVID. The community members who we have been hearing from about the external review process have historically been very strong supporters of the district. Trust has been lost, but we can prevent a further loss of trust by making sure that this process is done well and that it's done in a transparent manner. Additionally, the process thus far has been SCASD administration selecting a consultant to review itself. A review chosen by the entity that is being reviewed will lead to a biased and/or incomplete review. An RFP process would result in an unbiased assessment and audit of SCASD's response to the death by suicide that occurred in May 2024. And this type of transparent process would best benefit all students. Rather than merely provide commentary on the process thus far, I wanted to offer a constructive next step action, which would be within our current structures of CCL and CAC for Health and Safety. That's the Culture, Climate, and Learning Committee of the board and the Citizens Advisory Committee for Health and Safety. That's just off the top of my head, 2 structures we currently already have that we would normally use in a situation where we're looking to conduct an RFP. We could charge the committee or committees to write an RFP.
Ann?
So I see there's, for me, you're emphasizing transparency. And as I understand an RFP, we can potentially, if we were to wait, and the person is not online, correct?
They were unable to join us this evening, is my
So
understanding.
that they can't be here to address some of the concerns raised. So I'm again new to this. So if we do an RFP, is the best case scenario 4 weeks for us to write the RFP?
So in my experience, so a little, in times when we've used RFPs in the past, some examples in recent history would be the natural playgrounds is a good example. So we wanted more than just a playground design. We wanted a specific type of playground design. It was, however, still a business or profession where there were a known multitude of opportunities of people who would do that, right? So in that RFP, it was developed primarily by the administration, in my recollection, and provided to the board for review. And I think there was minimal input given about some of the parameters. Requests were solicited. I can't speak to exactly how long that took, but probably several weeks. Then there was establishment of interviews. As Gretchen had mentioned, an RFP typically involves some rubrics in terms of scoring. That there was a subset of the board, 1 or 2 board members that I recall that participated in that process of the reviews. We did not have CACs involved in that particular process, to my recollection. But a lot of it would depend on when those entities could then do those interviews, how quickly you can convene all the individuals that you're trying to have participate in those interviews, and so forth. And then those would be brought to the board, usually, typically with a recommendation. Depending on the circumstances, there have been RFPs where we've had perhaps two recommended that the reviewers felt were relatively comparable. There have been other instances, such as the recent RFP we did for aftercare, where none of them were brought forth as recommended. So out of that process still comes a recommendation from the administration. And I would say that the board is always in charge of choosing whether we use an RFP or we are simply provided a contract. The board makes the decision whether to hire that individual. It's a recommendation brought by the administration. So I just want to clarify that in terms of, like, the administration doesn't decide, the board gets to decide who we hire. That's a little bit of background on RFP from my point of view. So it can be as long as, if you have a lot of people respond quickly and you can interview quickly, it could be 1 to 2 months. It could be longer. Randy has experienced a lot more RFPs. Would you give an average of, like, or a range that you would say typically, at least in those professions that are typical, like architects, builders, those are often the cases where we use an RFP, where there's an established profession?
I would suspect it would be about 4 weeks at a minimum.
To complete the process? Okay.
It would be longer than that, because if you want to go through the CAC, and depending on when their meetings are and creating a rubric and creating the information then necessary to run a RFP, it would take a little bit longer than that.
So my worst case scenario is we do the RFP and then we hire the same person. And so, I mean, I tried to listen deeply to the comments and the kinds of imperatives, the exigencies you all wanted to us address. And so I looked at the book to try and say, are they talking about postvention? Her second edition deals with bullying. The first one didn't. And so I wish that she were here to kind of address the issues that is so important to this community. Like I want this. Like I feel, this is not my area, but I tried to read and be like, is this what they want? I feel like it is, but I'm no expert. I do think, though, that looking at the postvention, the kinds of questions, the documentation you want, I feel like she has this. Is she going to do everything you've just specified in your documentation? I don't know, but I do feel like she is a very credible expert who seems ready to do it, and I'm worried about losing that and then losing access, and then we're not addressing it. And so I honor your frustration, and I wish we could just give everyone the book and then see what they think. I'm not sure what to say. I do feel like I heard what you thought was important. I don't think it can be in person, all of it. I feel like logistically, I'm not sure. I looked for that in the book. But Gretchen, I feel like you have a list, and this is her protocols address a lot of that, not in the specificity you want, and it's going to be a larger, as I understand it, I can't speak for her, but as I understand it, it's gonna not be simply this one case, but what is the best practice moving forward so we protect kids? We all at this table are deeply committed to protecting kids. And so there is an argument for transparency, for sure. I do feel like there is also an argument for timeliness. So that's all.
Garlene?
I would like to add to what she just said. When I was looking, first of all, when I looked at her credentials and her bios, I was pretty impressed because I thought that they did a pretty good job. I would have been against it if I didn't think that her credentials were good. And like you said, her book really addressed a lot, and I was very impressed by that. And I was looking at the pros and cons. I was going online about OFPs because we did get a lot of letters about this. And of course, the timeliness of this, the OFPs does take a lot longer. But another thing is that sometimes some of the people that we may want, they're not going to go through an RFP. They're going to say, you know what, because there's a lot of things for them to go through. And so this woman that we found that could be exactly what we're looking for may decide. It's not your worst case scenario is that we get the same person again. My worst case scenario is that we get someone that probably is the only one that applied, or maybe two people that probably this person that the administration found is probably better than the other two people that applied to the RFP that we want. So that's my worst case scenario.
Okay, Dan?
I have more logistical questions. So in the contract, there's a not to exceed amount, right? That equates to about 75 hours of work. How do we arrive at that number? I think we should make that a higher number, so this person is not limited in their scope. I don't want them to feel rushed at all, but I think we need that increased, so they're not worried, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's we can always come back and say, the work is more extensive, the reviewer needs more time, and up that at any time. But we felt that there needed to be some kind of parameter.
Yeah, I mean, so I would say we need to at least put that at double it from the jump, so they're not feeling rushed.
Well, that's a subject that the board could discuss. To Mr. Johnson's point, it could come later, it could be discussed up front, and the contract could be adjusted.
I mean,
in
I
some
want
way.
them to, if we vote on this, or this is who we choose, I want them to do quality, extensive work, really dig in, and just knowing that, hey, I have 75 hours, it's approved, what's the board going to approve again, right? If we're going to approve something, let's approve something that's an extensive amount of time. If they don't go over that amount, fantastic, but I don't want them to feel rushed or constrained with that. Have we given them a time frame of kind of, you're looking to have this complete by, have we left it open?
Right now, it's open.
Okay.
Until they can complete the work.
What kind of check-ins will there be? Will there be administration checking in with this person? Like, will the board or the community receive periodic updates? What does that look like?
Well, we're going to be checking in as far as the administration central office, just in making sure that she has all the information and the needs that she needs, or if she needs any assistance in getting and
Connecting with people.
Connecting with people. Thank you. I'm having a hard time today. That we would be available to assist. So yes.
Because thinking through it, right? So if just say she's 2 weeks into doing interviews and she says, oh, this policy is an issue, or this is an issue, and they bring it up to you, can we ensure that that starts coming to the board so we can start making changes or working on what we need to work on, so it's not just one lump sum at the end?
Mm-hmm. So just realize that we're working on things already, because this work won't wait. We have to move on things. So if there are things that come to our light, I'm assuming it's going to come in a report. She is well aware that we're working on things. She wants to know what was in place when it occurred or before it occurred, not after it occurred. In order to make proper recommendations and review as far as the policies and procedures that we have. So, yes. And she's also aware that there's times where the scope is more expansive than originally thought, and the need for more hours and work. That's why she does an hourly rate instead of a set rate, because just to be honest, she's been burnt in the past because it was expensive. So I let her know that this is probably going to be some expansive work that she's going to have to do.
Peter?
Yeah, thank you. I think there are 3 or 4 things that I'm thinking about here. So one would be to, I guess, maybe reiterate something that Gretchen had brought up, which is about interviewing affected children, because that seems in what we have that is deliberately limited, and I don't understand what the clinical basis for that would be, and members of the community have said, but I really want my child to be interviewed. And so I think there's a conflict there. So that's just a...
So I want to speak to that because it came up in our conversations. She will speak to students, but she wants to get parents' permission in order to do it.
Yeah.
She has also had in the past where there's been some traumatization of students reliving and re-going through those things, and she wants to prevent that from occurring. So I have to listen to her feedback and experience and expertise on that subject as school psychologist and person that does this work.
So I appreciate that, and that explanation is helpful for me because I think it is kind of, it's a little hard to read the detail of those comments.
I kind of picked it up in that if you
from
read the
this.
if you read the permission form, it actually, there's a blurb about that, about concerns about re-traumatizing students. There was a little piece about that.
Yeah,
So
right.
in the permissions form, yeah.
But I think it needs to be
Oh,
stated
absolutely.
very explicit.
Sure, No, absolutely.
I don't, because there's a clear tension there. The second is that, and I think each of us have addressed this maybe in a little bit of a different way. I think that Gretchen has a list of, this thing, that thing, emails, logs, a whole list of things. And in the emails that we received, certainly from some members of the public, but not all members of the public, the sort of like the item number 4 was about ensuring that this person had access to all of the information. And I'm just wondering if there's anything, and maybe Mr. Etter knows, that we have to empower this person formally to be able to access information that is so highly confidential.
I don't know what it is that she'll be asking for, and I can certainly respond once she asks for things.
Okay, because that's definitely a...
So in preparation for this review, we have timelines, we have documentation. We want to be as transparent as possible and make sure that she has all the things that she needs, including parent emails, because she's working on our behalf. She's contracted on our behalf to do this review.
Right, so like health-related things, like confidential information.
Well, that would come up with when dealing with the parent, and if they want to share any of that confidential information with her, that's where it would come out.
Okay, I think that, and this is maybe an item number 3. I think that we have I think with some members of our public, there is almost like a teetering on a trust issue. And, they need to know or they can't look at everything, obviously, because there's a lot of, there is going to be, as it says on page 2 of the addendum, there has to be respect for privacy, and I think that that's really important. There's a concern that I have, and I don't want to be a concern troll about things, but a concern that I have is that individuals within the district will be defensive about handing things over and hide things. And I think that's a natural reaction. People will be worried about their reputation, et cetera, et cetera. So somehow we have to be persistent and consistent about overcoming that. So that's just more of a statement.
Well, one thing, Peter, one thing I'll share, having gone through policy committee, we've actually talked a lot about our cybersecurity policies recently. So at least in terms of records that any of our staff create or make, predominantly they're digital records, and we have full access to any of that regardless of whether they want to share. We can confiscate their device, it's owned by us, but even aside from that, pretty much everything on their devices are stored in our networks. So there are opportunities for at least those majority of things. Legally, we have the parameters to access any work product that our staff,
We do not make a habit, Peter, as you would guess, of searching anyone's documents for any reason at all or no reason at all.
Sure.
We only do that when we have a
compelling
reason for doing so.
Having been subject to right to know requests, I understand this only too well, but I think that there's a right to know request is one thing, but when we're talking about these issues that are obviously much more sensitive and right, there's something that we just I think have to assure members of the public and families that those things that are beyond the ken of a right to know request are going to be accessible to this individual. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I think that's important to me. I'm going to wait
And I
to say anything.
want to say
I have one other thing before we-
that our staff has been forthcoming in any information requested by administration, as far as emails, conversations, and that sort of thing. We have and have been and continue to keep track of for this whole purpose of this external review. So. The other thing I would like to say is that was one of the requirements. We wanted this person to be able to present to the board, not just to administration, so that they were getting the same information administration was getting, as to increase transparency with this whole review. So that was one of our criterias, and this person was willing to meet that criteria.
And so just to be clear, though, the board may receive some feedback that includes confidential information that we would have in a confidential manner in executive session, but then other things that she could share in terms of our procedures, processes, policies, then that would be she would present in a public manner to the board. Just so everybody's clear that there would be two prongs potentially, most likely.
And she'll probably take questions too when she's presenting in front of the public comments and stuff. I would
Yeah,
think.
from the board.
Right.
Yeah. Ann? Oh, sorry. Was that it, Connie? Okay.
So just to follow up, Peter, your last question about accessing records speaks to the strain throughout the letters about kind of forensic powers. And, okay, that's what I want to make sure. And so, so that then, because we have documentation already on our system, it would be provided to her. The second is, so we don't know, because the time to start is an important issue. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I'm less supportive of RFP. So I wanted to just reiterate Dan's question. What do we know about the time to start?
We feel that it was going to be sooner than later. We wanted it to get approved before we bring it forth. Have those discussions with her.
And yeah, go ahead, Aaron.
So I guess the the question is that I've got a number of questions just as I'm kind of listening here. It says that you interviewed 4 different people or organizations, and I guess my question is, what was it about each of those that either disqualified them or that you felt they didn't meet the standards? Because I think where I struggle with this is, Dr. Bader pointed out that the board has a choice, but really we're only given one option, like as a board. And I accept your recommendation as meaning something, but also having not been part of the interview process. I think to the point of all the emails and the public comments asking for an external review, I think when the person to do the review is identified, interviewed, and sort of entirely approached by internal people, the review doesn't feel external anymore. And I think that's where the concern comes in. So if we were to move forward with one person versus another, Dr. Erbacher in this instance, I think it would make sense for us to ask community members to participate in actually framing out the contract to make sure that we didn't miss anything, because that's probably how an RFP process would proceed if we were to go through committee, if we were to go through having a group of people participate. And I think that makes it feel more like a partnership than adversarial almost. So so my question is sort of a 2-part thing. It's like, who are the other people, and can
So-
we involve others in framing this contract?
So I want to start with, we have done a number of audits by this board, okay, that we have recommended. We have done the equity audit that we as administrators have recommended. We have done a special education audit, which
We've done more than one equity audit.
which we have recommended. We've done an ELA, which administrators have recommended. So that is the process for bringing forth audits and reviews, is the administration is charged with doing something to bring forth the recommendation, and that has occurred on numerous occasions to a successful rate, right? We have created plans, we have created committees, and action steps to address those things. So that's the process, and that's the process that we used here. The other thing I would say is we use a number of different criteria. Some of the things that I talked about, I wanted to be transparent. I wanted them to be able to present to the board. I thought that was pretty important for transparency. If they were reporting it just to me or Jonathan, and then we're reporting to where's the transparency in that? So that was a criteria. Timing. We wanted them to do it sooner than later, given that for the last 2 board meetings, we've sat here and listened to people wanting an external review. There seems somewhat urgency in getting that done. And so that's why we rushed. I wouldn't say rushed, but we put effort into this and doing this. We also did recommendations. Even if they weren't able to do it, we asked who would be a person that would be able to do this and who they would recommend. It's a close-knit community, we found out by talking to the people, and her name kept on coming up, which led us to believe, just through her recommendations and her co-authoring with these people, that we had a quality person here. I also like to say, I've been in the school district for 20-something years, and I have always strived to do what's best for this school community, the school district. If that wasn't the case, I wouldn't be in this position that I am here today. So I am interested in growing and doing better as far as a school district. That is the whole purpose for me bringing forth and having external review, doing these audits for the betterment of the school community. So that it was some of the criteria that we use, other than the criteria that I talked about previously. So.
Are we ensuring that the consultant is going to include bullying in the external review?
So I'm going to say no. I'm going to say that there needs to be another person who does that. And I have been in contact with the superintendent from Bellefonte School District. He's a new superintendent from New Jersey. In New Jersey, they focused on bullying in their school district. And he plans on focusing on it in Bellefonte School District. That's part of his plan, working in Bellefonte. He has forwarded me a name, a national name that does has a bullying corporation that goes into districts and helps them with their bullying processes. And so I think that is the person I want to reach out to really do a K-12 bullying, because bullying is more than just one school, right? Mm-hmm. It's K-12, it's all our schools. And I think we need to look at the whole process and the procedures involved in that, and I would like an expert to do that. So I'm currently looking into.
So we're back to what we discussed last meeting, a multi-pronged approach. So multiple reviews, multiple avenues of working through these things, which I think is important to note that this is just one piece of that, right? And until now, none of us really knew that, right? This is just one piece of the puzzle, and we're going to continue to bring in other experts to work on other pieces of the puzzle, because all these pieces go together, right? So we just need to make sure that we have that multi-pronged approach.
I was just going to say, that's new information to me, that, you know, that you've been working on finding somebody who can come into the district and take, you know, just a look at bullying. Things like that would be so helpful for the board to know. I mean, that could have affected, like, I think so much of our discussion tonight. I didn't even know that until just now. So I guess great. And then if there are any other areas where you're already planning for things to happen that are what are necessary to happen, what the board has been asking for, you know, if you could just share that with us, because if we know these things, it's very helpful. So
That just happened. I was at a conference, superintendent's conference, just this past 3 days, and had time to talk with some network with various superintendents, and had the chance to meet the new superintendent from Bellefonte, who was talking about bullying, and we had a conversation, and he brought this forth, and so, which is some of the reason I go through these things, to find out ways that we can steal and borrow to make the school district better. So,
Ann.
The comment or the discussion about bullying made me think about one other community comment, which was the imperative for the suicide external review to be both elementary, middle school, and high school, like an integration. And so in her book, she does address that. Can you just confirm that all three entities are?
correct. She says basically you got to take a holistic approach. You can't just focus in one area. Procedures and policies need affect the district in its entirety and not just one school. So, yes.
Yeah.
So, just to my understanding, it sounds like she's going to take that holistic approach to understanding all of our policies and administrative approach, but she's also going to focus on this specific instance and try to give us advice and information about, you know, this was done effectively, this could have been done differently, you know, that's...
Yes, I mean, that's the hope, yeah.
Okay.
That's what we're planning. That's the whole purpose of the interviews.
Deb.
Excuse me. I've really appreciated the conversation. I think it's been a really productive conversation, and I hope that it's reassured the community about the qualifications of this particular individual. I did want to circle back real quickly to one thing that Dan suggested, excuse me, which was increasing the do not exceed amount. You know, if we wanted to make a small amendment, I personally, as one of 9, would be open to that. I appreciate having some do not exceed, or you know, changing the wording to say not to exceed without additional authorization or something, to make it clear that, like, we know it may go more, right? We've had this conversation about legal fees with respect to the PPA, and we kind of talked about how the folly of putting a do not exceed on something where we don't know how much time they're going to need. So you kind of want to set it a little higher. I'd be open to that, right? Hoping that it might come in at less, because if we spend money on this, then we can't spend money on something else. But I'd be open to that as a small amendment if we wanted to try to, if we want to try to vote on that tonight.
Don't do it with a lawyer.
Well, as I had said offline before the meeting started, I don't know how serious you were about doubling the amount, but I think that's a problem with the Sunshine Act's requirement. I don't have an issue with your first comment going from 75 to 100, if that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, it wasn't those numbers, but yeah, increasing the amount.
I thought,
Currently, it's at 15.
It's at 15,000.
oh, I thought you said 70.
It equates to 75 hours work.
Oh, yeah, that was the number. Yes, correct. Yes. So I think a minor adjustment to that is not problematic, as Scott has stated. All right, go ahead, Dan.
Oh,
That's
well,
okay.
and then, you know, we can increase that, and then if they get close to that, then we bring it to the board before it gets to that point, and we authorize more.
Well, to Debbie's point, that's, the wording could be along that vein. Others? All right.
And I can make her,
Hmm?
I can make her aware of that. You know, she feels that she needs to go over that, just let us know so we have time to bring it to the board for an addendum.
Understood. So I'm going to take a turn. Bless you. I'm so sorry. Very much like Anne, I very much value the input from our community. I understand the trepidation and concern that's been expressed. I think, unfortunately, this particular need is really unique and very circumscribed and defined. And so finding someone who has the right qualifications, I mean, that's really important to all of us. And we don't want to just hire somebody to do something. We want to hire somebody with the right expertise, the skills, and the understanding of what to look for, right? It's not just about looking at documents. It's about putting that together in a picture and understanding how it comes together and how it needs to be adjusted for future benefit. So that was always really important to me, that whatever avenue we took to arrive at a person, that the person be a highly regarded individual, someone who has training. You know, to Mr. Johnson's point, this is a rare person who has done something somewhat similar in the past, has done some reviews, because you mentioned she'd had some difficulties. So that's reassuring to me that that's a process that she's been through before. I understand the concern. I think there's a push-pull about timing. I understand the need for transparency and how that's important. I also think that what I'd like the community to understand is that in order for us to make changes, we need results. And we don't want to rush the process and get a poor work product out of it, but at the same time, the longer we delay starting, the longer we delay having any information where we can make changes to prevent other incidents or problems and improve the lives of students. Another small fact of just the way that boards work is that budget season starts in about December, and we start to plan and make decisions about what we're going to spend money on. And so if this evaluation identifies that we need something specific, particularly if it involves staffing, we have to plan for that. And if we're not prepared with that information as early as reasonably possible, that makes it more challenging to plan for that. That means planning for that potentially off by another year, because we have to set a tax rate. We have to figure out, you know, how we're going to pay our staff and how many staff we're going to have. And so I really would like the benefit of the information from this to inform those kinds of decisions moving forward, because the sooner, if there's changes that we need to make, the sooner we know what they are, the sooner we can plan for them and pay for them and make them happen. So that's just one piece of the puzzle of some of the things that, as a board member, I also think about in trying to affect change, because there are a lot of dominoes that go together in order to get a particular end result that means change in terms of what we do in the district. Yeah, I think a lot of people have already said most of the other things. That's the one kind of specific thing that I thought I wanted to add to the conversation in terms of it. So I guess based on what I'm hearing from the board, the question before us is whether an addendum to the dollar amount is adequate for people to feel comfortable, or a majority of the board feel comfortable voting on the contract, whether that's something you want to, so a couple avenues before us would be to make that addendum and potentially vote. Another avenue would be to ask the administration to make changes to the contract and bring forth a slightly tweaked or different contract at next Monday's meeting. I think we would have to be clear on what those requests were of the administration in terms of changes, so that they can do their best efforts and make sure that the provider is comfortable with that as well. I'm open to other possible scenarios, but those are the two that come to mind off the top of my head. Yes, Peter?
I would like to be able to hear, I think, from the public before I would want to put forward any of the avenues, which I think are very reasonable, the process that you just put before us. But I don't want to say more or weigh in with a dollar amount or whatever until we would hear from the public.
Others?
For me, I think, and I think Ann pointed this out before, it would have been really helpful if she could have joined us tonight, even over Zoom, just to talk a little bit about her work and how she would frame such an analysis. If we were to postpone and try to tweak the contract, is there a possibility that she could join us at a future meeting?
I don't.
Okay.
I don't know. I can ask, but I don't know.
Okay.
Other thoughts? In order for me to have a sense of the majority of the board, I need at least a majority of the board to share some thoughts. Yeah, Gretchen.
So, given what you just said, and what Aaron just said, I think it would make sense to postpone till Monday, since, as Dan brought up, it's only 1 week.
Agreed.
And that way, that would give Mr. Johnson the opportunity to at least ask her if she could be here with us. And I know Anne has expressed she would like to ask questions if that's, we know it might not be possible, but if it's only 1 week, as Dan said, then that would give Mr. Johnson the opportunity to at least ask her if she could join us. And it would also, I think, give us, I mean, I learned a lot tonight listening to administration. And so just to be able to incorporate the new information that I got tonight into, you know, what other tweaks of the contract I might be interested in or others might be interested in before Monday. So I guess that is what my suggestion would be. So I'll make a motion to postpone the vote of 10B until Monday,
September 30th.
September 30th.
Colby, second.
Okay. That's been moved and seconded. So the motion on the table is to postpone this particular agenda item for action on September 30th with some modifications to the to the contract as discussed. Is there any discussion on the motion that's on the table?
Can I just ask if we were to approve this motion and postpone it, would that
Supersede? Oh, sorry, I shouldn't speak for you.
Well, no, I'm thinking if that would move it to next Monday, would that mean that we don't have public comment on this item?
Oh, that's a fair question. I certainly am more than willing to continue to have public comment on this item. If there's no objection from the board, we would still ask people to keep to the 3 minutes because we have a large number of people here. That was, yeah, I'm sorry that I didn't clarify that in advance. It's been in my head the whole entire time, so I didn't verbalize it,
Totally
so
fine, 'cause
apologies.
I would actually like to hear some of what the suggestions might be of what could go into the contract if we're talking about delaying for a week and seeing if there's things we want to add or addendums we want to make. So, yeah.
And just to remind everyone, that will be a conversation with the provider, whether that's something they feel they can provide. So I just want to be upfront. We may get some suggestions that may not be something in her skill set or something that she is able to do. So please understand if it's something that's not included, that there may be reasons for that. Peter, were you wanting to add something to it? Okay. Sorry, I'm going to do one more scan. Any other comments on the motion on the table to postpone the item? And once we would postpone, then that would remove the previous motion from the table, just to be clear. No other comments? Okay. So I have to offer public comment, but I just want to be clear, my offering for public comment was on this particular motion to postpone. I will open comment again, just in general on this item. So for efficiency's sake, I hope I'm being clear, if you want to comment on specifically about postponing, I'll open public comment for that. And again, I will reopen comment in general on this overall item after we come to some kind of conclusion. Yes.
Shoshanik Makarian, Patton Township. It's my first time being at the board meeting, so to understand. If you are just postponing, then I would appreciate if the community could also see the contract, because the attachment link was not available, so that we can provide. Every time I clicked, it just said no authorization and wouldn't open the contract, so that we can at least have some feedback to it by Monday. Thank you.
Yeah, apologies, that's unusual, and just for future reference, I know you may not be engaging with the board all the time, but for community members to know, please reach out to us. Lynn Tressler is our board secretary. If there's a technical issue with a link on board docs, feel free to reach out. We'll try to get that fixed as quickly as we can. Typically, any contract we're approving is on the agenda and is available for the public to review. So I apologize if there was a problem with that. We were not aware of that. Not that I know of. So certainly we usually, if we're aware, we correct those problems immediately. So apologies. Any others on the motion to postpone? Do we have anyone online that wants to make public comment regarding the motion to postpone? Okay. With that, we'll have a roll call. Do you have a motion that you can read for everybody's benefit prior to the roll call?
Motion was made to postpone the 24-25 consultation agreement with Dr. Terry Erbacher to provide an external review of the school district policies and procedures related to suicide prevention, screening, assessment, intervention, and postvention to the September 30th, 2024 board meeting.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll have a roll call vote then. Oh.
That's okay. Ms. Brandt?
Yes.
Dr. Buck?
Yes.
Dr. Crevecore?
Yes.
Dr. Demo? Yes. Ms. Huff?
Oh.
Mr. Colby?
We missed her.
Yes.
Dr. Miller?
Yes.
Dr. Anderson?
Yes.
Dr. Vader?
Yes. Okay. So that puts to bed a vote on this particular item for this evening. We will revisit this agenda item on the 30th, again for action, just to make sure that that's clear. Thank you very much, Jonathan and Stephanie, for your contributions. And with that, as promised, I will open up in general on this item public comment. So if I can have people join us at the podium, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Jennifer Black, Half Moon Township. Please understand, I have no problem with this specific recommendation. I've looked into her, things, from the website look okay. There were other places, other groups such as the Retrospective Fatality Analysis Consultants that I thought was a better fit personally. And they will come in person. That is something that they offer. But I just want people who don't know me, if you only know me from coming to these school board meetings and talking about my daughter and things happening with her before and after her death, I don't think you truly get an idea of the kind of person I am and how trusting I typically am. I am a person who trusts implicitly and sometimes too much. But you've got to understand that my husband and I had to call the first 2 meetings with the school district after my daughter died. Nobody asked for a meeting with us. We called those meetings. You have to understand that all summer long went by and we heard nothing from the school district, from administrators, until August, when Curtis asked to meet with us. And we asked for a review. My husband and I asked for a review to be done. And so an internal review was done, looking at what happened after Abby passed. So we came back and said, we'd like an external review, and it should contain this. And so perhaps that helps you understand why I'm not trusting the transparency of this selection, only because my husband and I have had to push for every shred of information and push and push and push. And I'm not somebody who's just here to be a thorn in your side. I want an external evaluation that is thorough and that covers everything. And if I thought that that was done and done well, I mean, I know I'm not going to get answers that any specific answers that I want. There aren't specific answers I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who's an expert to do this review, and I want to feel that the person is chosen because they are the best fit, and not because they are the best fit with the narrative or with the story that we want to tell about what happened. Thank you.
Thank you. Sure.
Shoshanik Makarian, Patton Township. I happen to be not just a parent, but also a sociologist. Excuse me. And I happen to have done some evaluations, not for schools, but for governments. And I've had traveled a lot and worked with governments. There was a comment here that she may be too busy, she may not have time to work with us. And believe me, governments have always found time to work with our evaluation teams. But this topic is so sensitive, and I do not believe that when that person starts the evaluation, the parents of children affected, not just those who had this unfortunate outcome of having committed suicide, but those who need mental health, I don't believe these families will not be available. That's one thing. And second, about this candidate, I don't believe that the candidate who has such a reputation and conducts so much research does not know how much time usually such research takes and what are the challenges of conducting this type of research. They always know. And in fact, since I'm not a social worker, I would have liked to know what are the usual challenges they face and how they overcome these challenges. And that's why presentation and a proposal in advance would have helped us understand how this candidate was going to approach this research and evaluation in our district. 3, I was surprised actually. I came with a much positive attitude, and the more I listened, the more I was left with an impression that this is a chaotic approach to just push in that stick in. What is the outcome we are trying to get after this evaluation? Suppose she says, we need a review. Is she going to help us conduct the review? How we are going to proceed with the review? And that is part of the research proposal we should request from outside or with the open call to see how they are going to conduct the evaluation, who they are going to interview, how they are going to deal with challenges and time constraints, and what are the next steps. I also want to ask Mr. Johnson, if you conducted this preliminary review, did you reach out to other schools where she had worked with? If she's so busy, so much full with schedule, how did she work with them? And 2, whether they were happy afterwards. You allocated 75 hours. I'm shocked how she can do. That's 3 days. I usually, when I travel to other countries to conduct research, I spend there 5 days. And how in 3 days she's going to meet, I don't know who, but in my list as I was listening, teachers, counselors, parents, friends maybe, and perhaps some of the students who would want to. But parents, they know so much about their children, and counselors. I do not understand how a counselor would feel comfortable, for example, in a focus group, to share their concerns about practices in the district when that report is going to be reported to you, Mr. Johnson, first. That's why I think external evaluation and external reporting to the board simultaneously with the administration would have facilitated open and honest input to what's happening in our mental health service practices, especially practices. And just one more thing I want to say, you too much emphasized policy and documentation. I think that research perhaps in your mind is going to be just about documents, but I think this is so important to focus on practices. And practices require focus groups with parents, teachers, counselors, friends, and perhaps some students if they would want to do. And we need to see a proposal. That's why open call is important, because that will also make us see how much money is needed for a good or a certain level of research, and then we can figure out what to do. Thank you.
Others?
Lauren Lowe, Patton Township. I wanted to make one point just about on the agenda, one of the organizations referenced as having been consulted, was listed on there as retrospective family analysis. The correct name of that organization is Retrospective Fatality Analysis. I just wanted to note that. That is an organization I have some familiarity with. In reference to the current contract that was proposed, Dr. Erbacher, I agree, appears to have excellent credentials. I am a school psychologist myself, so I am inclined to believe that school psychologists are good people to approach for these type of issues and have a strong background in these types of things. She seems to have a vast experience. In looking at the contract, however, I do have some concerns about that. Some of them have been addressed tonight in some of the discussion. The first was about the review being fully remote. Why I do think that some things can be done remotely. I was disappointed to see that it would be fully remote. I think that there are many portions that really would require an in-person visit. And it seemed like one of the benefits of having a person within the state would have been that they could come in person. One of those pieces, I think, is the student interviews. That would be important to do in person versus remotely. And I do believe that those student interviews are essential. I don't see how we can assess a school climate or impact of our policies and procedures and how those things were carried out without input from students. The final piece, I felt like it wasn't clear within that contract that there would be a primary focus on the lived experience of lost survivors. That is a major focus in the National Strategy for Suicide Prevention, recently adopted. That is an increased focus on that in this type of effort, is really focusing on the experiences of families, of lost survivors, and of people who experience themselves suicidality, suicide attempts, and who struggle with those. And so I really want to make sure that that is a key portion of the focus of the review. Thank you.
Others? Yes.
Harold McFerrin in the borough, grandchildren in the school district. I think there was due diligence among the three people who arrived at this conclusion of this particular person that you're nominating or suggesting would be a good fit. But as I look at those three people who were part of the selection group, I think an important element was missing, and that was someone who has experienced it firsthand, who can bring another perspective to the search. And I think that was missing when it was just the three administrative professionals working. We've had people say that they would be very happy to volunteer and participate in any way that the school district would allow them to participate. As I'm sitting here, I'm very much aware of you're up there and we're back here. And I think the approach emphasized you're up there and we're back here. And I think it needs to be a more cooperative element. And the only way that I think that can happen is if you broaden the group of people who are going to create or offer names to be selected by the school district to lead this program that we're trying to institute here. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Michelle Barassa, Half Moon Township. I just wanted to add to all of the comments that I've already heard, that I've heard things about timeliness and moving forward, and I truly appreciate that. I want to call out to you, board, that this is also a moment for you to regain the trust of the community. We're really struggling, and it seems as if you went out and did this RFP, the candidate sounds very qualified, and thank you for that. But if you're part of the investigation, that makes me think that maybe something was said that was somebody on this side of the room talked about what was omitted. And I just want you to help us build up trust, because I don't like sending my kids to a school that I am questioning. So please consider that in as much transparency as you can. I recognize there's faculty involved. You're not going to be able to tell us directly what happens with those individuals. We're not asking for that, but we are asking for you to help the community have faith that you are all doing the best to make sure our students are safe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eva George Ferguson. Thank you so much to the board. I heard a lot of compassionate concern tonight, and I really appreciate it. My only concern, I'm a little bit concerned that we have separated out bullying, because I don't think we can discuss suicide and mental health without it. I just don't think we can get a full scope without actually working in tandem with those topics. They just go hand in hand far too often. And I don't think it's about the timing necessarily so much as that, yes, it's the right person, highly qualified, clearly. But without community involvement in the parameter and scope, and without understanding that there will definitely be some sort of public forum for comment, or some sort of public bringing forth of factors within the school that we perceive as parents and know as a fact from our children that are concerns, I don't think they can get the full picture without our voice. And lastly, I just want to reiterate my perspective as an adult whose friend took their own life in middle school, that, you know, I hear the concern about the students, and what do we call it, triggered trauma, re-triggering, okay. I think the concern is more that without talking about it, our children feel voiceless, and that leaves them feeling powerless about their own feelings and how they may feel reactionary to what happened. And their sadness is a depth that we just can't fully comprehend, but certainly should be taken into account. They need to be heard. Their agency that we could give them through an interview, and not tell them, please don't talk about this, you know, we don't want to know if there was this, we don't want to know, maybe that's your opinion. I'm pretty sure that perceived experience on their part is more important than many other things that we've talked about tonight. So, thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else this evening? Yes.
Hi, Rebecca Luthien, State College Borough. I just wanted to agree with everyone else that spoke here tonight and also add my thoughts from the meeting. Earlier, a concern was raised that individuals might not be forthcoming with information to the reviewer when somebody asked the question, and Dr. Johnson mentioned confidently that everyone had been forthcoming so far. With all due respect, I believe that mindset endangers this being a comprehensive, unbiased review. I think it's important to keep in mind that we don't know what we don't know. In the last meeting, there were several mentions of an atmosphere of individuals being uncomfortable and even a fear of endangering their jobs for speaking up. I question if those who might be hesitant to come forward with information that could be beneficial, that we know are out there, being more hesitant speaking up to an external reviewer that has been adopted by administration with no other possible options. Perhaps this person is the best person for the job. They seem very highly credentialed. However, it seems with the lack of transparency in choosing this person, you're potentially unintentionally undermining those individuals feeling comfortable to come forward on this sensitive topic, starting off with a disadvantage before you've even begun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Jennifer Nicholas, State College Borough. Just very quickly, I thank you all for your care and thoughtfulness tonight. I just want to reaffirm comments that other people have made, that as you continue this discussion, please do your best to center the voices of those who have lived experience with the loss from suicide. I feel like that perspective needs to continue to be centered. Thank you.
Thank you. Others? Do we have anyone online looking to make a public comment? Okay. Okay. I think with that, we'll take a 5-minute recess and return at 9:15. Okay, I'd like to reconvene the September 23rd, 2024 regular board meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. Before we return to our agenda, just a couple announcements. One, Mr. Johnson will be adding some of those criteria that he shared verbally tonight regarding the previous contract. He'll be amending that to the agenda item, just so I know I find it easier to read something than sometimes I do to process listening to it. So that's going to be available, added to that document if someone wants to review that in more detail. Secondly, I do want to apologize. I was caught off guard this evening during public comment. We do not allow the names of personnel or personnel to be directly discussed during public comment. We also don't allow students to be discussed unless it's the parent of that individual student and they're making that choice to speak about it publicly. So I apologize to staff members whose names were used this evening that I didn't make that correction more quickly. And I will just share with those of the public that are here a reminder about that, and we'll try to remind people again in the future if we have a large sensitive discussion in advance, but I was not expecting that to occur. So that individual has my apologies. And I think those are the only two things I have to add, and we can return to the agenda, which would put us at agenda item 9C, which is a motion to grant permission to bid Mountain Nittany Elementary project. It's shown in attachment 9C.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, that's been moved and seconded. Do we have any questions on this? This is regarding our additions at Mount Nittany L that'll include additional classroom space, a new multi-disabilities classroom, and a variety of other things. Okay. Is there any public comment regarding this item? Okay. With that, board members in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, that item is passed. That completes the action items portion of our agenda. Next up, we'll move on to information reports. First, we have Drs. Bucher and Downs to provide an overview of some adjustments to the Delta Middle School lottery system.
Good evening. Thanks for having us this evening. I'll start us off. You have a memo in front of you. I'm not going to read that verbatim, but provide a quick summary of how we got to this point. As you're well aware, last year we went through a process with a committee discussing the options of Delta remaining a program or becoming a school, which you guys made a decision on last spring. And as part of that process, and through discussions of this committee, we talked about the enrollment process and how students were selected, chosen to be Delta Middle students. And typically what we've done in the past is do an overall lottery. If we had more applications submitted, then we had open seats. And what we did was on the third Monday of December, the student services director, I don't know if she even knows this yet, Stephanie, will be selecting balls out of a hopper this December. And we she knows now, I guess. And so we did one overall lottery, which didn't necessarily represent the student the State College School District population from an attendance area. So through discussions at the committee, we started bouncing some ideas with Jonathan off of him, and are decided to try to balance how our Delta Middle population is represented from the district lens and do kind of 8 separate lotteries based upon the percentages of students from their elementary catchment areas. And for some more details on kind of those numbers, what they look like this past year, Jonathan can elaborate.
Yeah, thank you, John. So based on the lottery that was conducted last year, there were 34 seats available at Delta Middle. So that lottery last year that was conducted was for this current school year that we're currently in. So for example, just to give you some idea how this would work, the Easterly Parkway Elementary students currently comprise 11% of our elementary population, resulting in 4 seats being allocated to students from Easterly Parkway. Under the new system, these 34 seats would have been allotted to students living within these elementary catchment areas. So this would be an example from the past to give you an idea. Really, if John could maybe talk a little bit more if needed, but the students that move through the system out of 8th grade into 9th grade determines the seats, number of seats that would be available any given year based on enrollment. So for example, based on last year, those 34 seats, how they would have been divided up. Coral Street is 8% of elementary catchment, would be 3 seats. Easterly Parkway, 11%, 4 seats. Ferguson Township, 10%, 3 seats. Grays Woods, 13%, 4 seats. Mount Nittany Elementary, 5 seats, along with Park Forest and Radio Park and Spring Creek, all having 5 seats each. So one of the questions that we talked through is if an elementary student school does not utilize all their allocated seats, all unused seats will be made available to students remaining in the lottery regardless of what elementary catchment zone they live in.
Yeah, and so we just think why the system's not perfect, it'll never be perfect. I think it's a better effort for us to represent the school district in terms of the Delta population. So we think this is a pretty big step, not too much more work either to make this happen. And while we recognize it's not perfect, it all depends on who applies and those type of things out of our control. But we think this is a better effort on our behalf to represent the school district in that manner. I'm happy to answer any questions people have.
Yeah, Carly.
I think the equity consideration that you're doing in this lottery selection is wonderful, and I'm glad you're doing that. Do you have any idea about siblings? Like, would you make any exceptions for 2 siblings, one that's already there or one that's already been through the lottery, and there's an extra tickets, an extra seat? Would that be given to a sibling, or did you
Not at
consider
this.
these?
Yeah, we've had that question. Not at this point. We don't feel that gives an advantage to people that have siblings. So what do you do about an only child, right? It doesn't have siblings, or so we just simple. Siblings don't get any priority. Yeah.
That's tricky, yeah.
Yeah.
Aaron.
Yeah, so I actually had a conversation with Mr. Bucher is it Dr. Bucher?
It is,
Okay,
newly.
Dr. Bucher, sorry, you can call me Mr. Miller next time. We had a conversation about this on Friday. My only concern, this is sort of a statistics question and almost a logistics standpoint. If you break it up by school this way, my only concern about it is that you potentially, I don't want to say disadvantage, but in a sense it is disadvantage kids from specific schools. So because Coral Street, for instance, or Ferguson Township only have 3 allotted seats, the assumption made here, I think, is that proportionally those buildings are going to have the same number of applicants. And I'm not sure that that's necessarily the case. I think you're likely to see more applicants come from the Park Forest region to begin with, and certainly schools that are in terms of proximity a little bit closer. And if you think about it, suppose you've got 10 applications from Coral Street and you've got 10 applications, say from Radio Park. The students at Radio Park have a higher chance of getting a seat than a student from Coral Street. So if you can do the numbers any way you kind of want. But I guess I was wondering if it makes more sense to do it by middle school catchment zone rather than by elementary school catchment zone.
Well, so I will share, having been on the Delta as a School committee, we discussed this particular issue, is why it's risen to the bubble to the top, because we pulled those numbers and looked at which schools had typically a lot of attendance and which schools did not. And there were clearly some schools that had a much larger either community knowledge about Delta or for whatever reason had a high percentage of applicants, and wanting to ensure that all the schools, all the elementaries had at least an equal opportunity. And so I think, and there might have been a little misunderstanding, it's not that they will have 3 seats all the time. It depends on the number of seats available. So it's a percentage based on their percentage of attendance in the district. So it could be 3 seats one year, it could be 5 seats one year, if there's more seats available. And that's why when there's extraneous seats left over, then students would have an opportunity to take advantage of those seats. So I struggle. I don't think it would solve the problem that is trying to be addressed, because if you just did it by middle school catchment areas, you could again easily, depending on the number of seats, it would be challenging, I think. I don't know. Anyway, that's just what I'm understanding. Yeah.
So my question is, after we fill these 34 seats and we move people to a wait list, how are they ranked on a wait list? Are we still sticking to percentages based on elementary school catchment areas? Like what does that look like? Or does everybody just get thrown on a wait list and then the percentages are thrown out the window?
That's a good question. So any remaining seats would be open to anyone available, and that would continue with the wait list.
How do we determine the order on the wait list?
We would do the lottery at the moment.
Still pull, so number
Still
1, number
pull.
2, number 3, so
It's not a ranked wait list.
Yeah, I just was unsure
it's
if
a bucket wait list.
So at the end of the day, after you fill the 34 seats, you could still end up with 15 students from Park Forest Elementary if they get pulled in the lottery as the first 10 seats on the wait list. Sure.
Yeah, it's my understanding of that, the way you're explaining it.
Yeah, I'm just curious.
Yeah, just for reference, so you know, we had 36 students on the wait list. We went through 25 of those students and made offers this year. So the wait list, we hit all but 11 so far, which is, I think, good. But
Debbie?
John basically expected my question, which was how big is the wait list usually and how many of those kids usually get in? So I'm curious, you said you went through 25. How many of them actually enrolled? Because I'm guessing you might have offered it and then a couple might have said no thanks.
yeah, we had kids move. We had kids change who were chosen originally, and then July rolls around and all their buddies are going to Park Forest and Mount Nittany, so the friends is a big pull, of course. We respect that. So a whole bunch of different dynamics. We do have a very large 8th grade class this year of 55 students currently, today at least. So that's much bigger than last year. So we could possibly not even have a lottery next year. That would be really nice for Stephanie and for myself.
And if you, so say that the 11 kids that remain on the wait list now, if they don't get in throughout this academic year, is the lottery starting from scratch
No,
next year?
you get lotteried once, and then you have a spot available.
Okay, so the kids that are on the wait list now are
Yes.
guaranteed to be the beginning of the spots next year?
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, in that respect, then it is going to take longer for
Just to
this
flush out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Sure.
that's fine. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't disagree with that policy. I was curious how it worked. Thanks.
I did have a question from somebody about whether you reserve any emergency spots for kids that get into a situation where they really need to move schools, and they would really benefit from the Delta program, Delta Middle, where the other two, where the other two middle schools really don't fit their needs. Is there any kind of reserved spots for students like that, or?
No, there is not currently. Yeah, and just to that's a really tough. I personally don't want to get into the business of determining whose story is more important or whose situation is more important than others. That's kind of a no-win for me. I'm not sure I have that capacity to do that.
Yeah, Peter.
Since this is one of a number of things that Delta is doing right now, and I want to be respectful of this agenda item, but is there anything else that's happening with Delta that you could tell us about in 30 seconds?
So we have our third committee meeting this Wednesday of the Delta Transition Committee that we requested to happen, that you guys obliged the community with last year. And so we are working diligently. We already have determined that Delta will remain in the school's names. I say names because we're going to have a middle school and a high school. And now we're working on, we just put a proposal out for iterations of those names and hope to take that back to the community to vote on names. And we hope to have that by mid to late October. So we're making progress. Also, we're working with state high representatives about what's on the diploma for graduation as well. So those are so we're making some good progress.
Thanks.
That's great.
And we're slated to be back here December 2nd.
Anything else? So this is just an informational update. This is not something, I mean, it's not really something in our purview, so I just want to make that clear that that's the deal. All right. Thank you very much, John and Jonathan. Next up, we're going to look at the Park Forest Middle School project update. We'll have Mr. Brown and Mr. Fisher join us at the table for that update.
Only Mr. Fisher.
Oh, so, yeah. I just read what they tell me.
Just a quick update from our our steering committee held last Monday. We had the community forum this evening. Had a really good turnout and a lot of positive comments, really. Kind of listed some of the topics that were kind of the hot topics going down through. People really like the fact that we're focused on, providing good daylight in the building. There were some questions about student accessibility, kind of the accessibility throughout the building, not just getting into the building. Some concerns about hallway blind spots. So from a security standpoint, or kids getting in trouble or getting into being mischievous. Restroom locations, lockers, bag, instrument storage, that kind of thing. Getting kids to be able to access that kind of those spaces easily. Elevators, some of our small group instruction spaces. Some of our teachers, I think, on the steering committee felt that they wanted kind of a clearer picture of what those spaces were going to be used for. Tennis courts, we kind of talked about that some tonight as well. And then really kind of the location, size of the cafeteria, and the support spaces from the cafeteria and kitchen. So the storage, our food storage, receiving, that kind of thing. So we're working through all of them. And again, there was a lot of good positive feedback. And I think our footprint is pretty well kind of in stone now, which is really what we're after at this stage. So we can really get a good budget number together. So. A lot of our facilities master plan, we talk about our facilities master plan, and it's a big part of that's Park Forest Middle, and I think that's really been the focus. But kind of now that we feel as though we've got a footprint pretty well nailed down, we're going to kind of circle back and, renew the focus on the rest of the master plan, which is really our facilities assessment district-wide. As well as then getting into our playgrounds and our athletic facilities, as well as greenhouse gas inventory, sustainability efforts, that sort of thing. So, but all in all, I was really impressed with the group that showed up last Monday and the feedback that we got.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to be there for part of that, and that was we had some helpful feedback for sure. Questions from the board? Thanks very much, Mike. Next up, we're going to look at several policies, and Ms. Simpson's going to join us to provide an update. Welcome.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you. Yes, as a reminder, these are information and discussion items that we're talking about tonight. There are no action items on this cycle, so this is simply for information. First of all, I'd like to introduce Deirdre Hauk, who is with me tonight, and she has been very instrumental in developing these policies. Her breadth and depth of knowledge in this area is outstanding, and she is often sought out for her expertise in such areas, and I'm proud to say that she's been part of our policy team in working with this. So she's here as I'm here as her assistant tonight. So by way of background, in April 2024, the new Title IX regulations were adopted to be effective August 1st. And as you've probably seen in the news, has been a lot of discussion about Title IX. Our district has started to move forward with, like I said, information and discussion on some policies. In those Title IX regulations, there are adjustments to existing rules and definitions. There's new rules, there's duties and roles, there's modified procedures, reporting obligations, and a focus on discrimination based on sex rather than the former focus of sexual harassment. So a few of the items of note in the new regulations, they clarify that sex discrimination includes discrimination based upon sex stereotypes, sex characteristics, pregnancy or related conditions, sexual orientation, and gender identity. They also provide increased obligations such as providing students who are pregnant with resources about our obligations and associated accommodations. They allow for oral complaints. They require certain training requirements, which we're working to develop and get underway. And we'll be looking at roles and responsibilities to ensure alignment with those policies. So as these are moved forward, barring anything that comes up that would stop that, we currently have policy 103, 103.1, 103.2, and 104, excuse me. 103.2 will now be encompassed in 103. Okay, so that's collapsing that a little bit. And again, these are suggested revisions. All the components of the revised policy are now covered in those 3 policies moving forward. There will be some additional policies that will be affected as a result if these policies are adopted by the board. So we'll be looking at those if need be moving forward. And I believe Deirdre has some information to share with us.
I just wanted to give a little bit of background about the way we approached this, which was to make sure that the policies are created in a manner that gives every student that's coming into the school district, regardless of what their special class is, whatever their protected class is, that they have access not only to the regulatory governed, but sort of the spirit of what we believe SCASD is, which is that every student would feel like they were having equal access to education and could access all of the programs and educational activities without any interference, and that the district would be moving to identify any barriers that were in place, any discriminations that were in place, and work to identify and remedy them immediately.
Well, we based these proposed policies off the PSBA suggested language, and we did have some input regarding the Title IX regs and ATICSA, which is the Association of Title IX Administrators. And again, as we get information in and we look forward, if there are things that need to be adjusted, we're certainly going to be working through those. So we have policy 103, which is discrimination, harassment affecting students, and then the grievance process that is attached to that. We have 103.1, which is the non-discrimination qualified students with disabilities. And then the 104, discrimination, harassment affecting staff, and the administrative procedures that would also accompany that. And then the pregnant, parenting, married students, policy 234 is a new policy. So we'll entertain any questions that you may have regarding any of those. As you'll see, several of those policies are very lengthy.
Yeah, I do want to thank you both for your work on that. I think these were highly specific, using a lot of legal terminology and language, which Deirdre really helped us work through and understand better in the meeting. And we had quite a detailed discussion about, a number of these. Not to say that we can't have further detailed discussions about them. So, questions for the policy team? Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, thank you. This is an awful lot. So thank you to everybody who worked on it. On page 14 and 15 of policy 103, it says that there will be training for Title IX coordinator, compliance officer, and designees. And I just wonder who is responsible for that training. Who's responsible for that training? Because we have, I think, 4 people who are designated as having to have it, and then they disseminate training to the rest of the district. Is that right?
So the training requirements are outlined in the regulations. So the regulations are the governing topic and objectives and have all of the information that we need to make sure that the staff have. So the initial training will be the core team of decision makers. So the coordinator, deputy coordinator, and their designees. That training is currently going to be authored by us in-house using some of the information that we've received from ATICSA and some of the information we've received from other agencies and attorneys groups that have provided background. Currently, I'm the only employee in the district that has certifications by ATICSA, but if we need to expand out the roles to seek professional certifications, we can certainly do that. There is no requirement under the regulations for that, so it's just going to be a matter of looking at what information we can deliver and feel comfortable with.
We're also going to, there is a requirement for all staff to be trained too. So we're looking at the Vector program to be able to implement that as well. So yeah, we have considered the training. I personally in Title IX role, coordinator role, have had a lot of training before I got here, and we'll continue to look for those trainings. We all went to the IU sponsored a training down at Penns Valley that a lot of our administrators attended, including Deirdre and I both. So we are continuing to attend training and make sure that those trainings are implemented. So yes, that's a good point. Thank you.
So the Association of Title IX Administrators, you are certified through that program, and so you know the delivery from that certification, and you're able then to provide it to...
I don't deliver ATICSA. It was not a train the trainer program, no. I'm certified by ATICSA, which is not a requirement, but was something we sought out. Right. The regulations require the staff to be trained on specific topics. It does not require the district to certify or hire people to train us. It provides us with all of the information that we need to learn. And so currently, the initial first phase will be to train the coordinator, the deputy coordinators. That conversation will then lend us toward the next level. The next level of training is investigators, decision makers, and other staff who are either authorized to adjust or terminate supportive measures. And then there's a fourth sort of topic area, which is people who are facilitators of informal, she's talking at the same time, I want to make sure I'm not stepping on you, on informal resolution. And so there's a couple of different topic areas. The regulations don't call for a specific certification or a specific level, and so we do have some freedom of trying to determine what's the best delivery for that. The one thing that we're sort of following as the guide is the manner in which the topics are required. So one of the requirements is for the coordinators as well as for the investigators is that they are trained on our policy and our grievance procedure. So we can't do the trainings until we have those in place, because that is an element of the training. And so that's sort of why the training happens after, because we do have to have that topic material in order to deliver it. And so then training personnel on that policy that you have before you will be one of the blocks or sessions of that training.
That's very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, Dan.
So page 2, line C, we talk about the harassment was severe.
Which policy, Dan?
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm in 103.1, the first one.
Well, there's 103 and then there's 103.1. So is it for disabilities or just overall the first one? Okay.
The first one, discrimination, harassment affecting students.
Okay. 103, page 2.
Page 2.
Page 2.
So just so I understand, who's determining whether that's severe or pervasive and regular harassment? How are we tracking that within our
So on the assessment process?
Yeah.
That will be done by the coordinator or their designee, and that will be based on other sample and standards that are already existing. When you go to some of the different regulatory sites, OCR, they have examples on there of times. We also would refer to attorneys for support if there were areas that were, like, we're not really sure, is this sound, like it's pervasive? But applying sort of case law and standards that have already been existing in the Title IX realm, understanding that this is a new definition that they've just changed this year. And so the and has become an or, and there's some different word language. So there will be some requirement to rely back on attorneys if there's cases that look like they may, but we're not really sure.
But I think it's important too, and I don't know how much changed from the original because I was trying to compare them earlier, but the paragraph on page 2 as well that deciphers between bullying and harassment and gives the differences between those, I think that's super important too for everybody to understand those differences.
Right. Thank you.
Other questions about any of these 4 policies? Okay.
Anything that comes up, feel free to reach out. Like I said, it's, it has been a work in progress, and I think will continue to be until we get something in place. So thank you.
Okay, thanks so much for all your work on that.
Yes, thanks.
Our final information report is an overview of the many student mental health supports available in the district. I'd like to welcome back Dr. Bucher and Ms. Beaver.
Well, I'm so glad I'll be pulling lottery balls in December. That's exciting news to hear about tonight. So, good evening. I'm going to be sharing some board information about current programs and supports within our district, as well as highlighting some new programs and initiatives that we're looking for and moving forward. Student Services has a long history within the State College School District. A wide range of services are offered to support students and families, and our team is composed of professionals who are experts in the field and support a high-quality learning environment where students can grow, thrive, meet their full potential through caring and responsive education. As you can see from this slide, it's just a glimpse of those services offered under the umbrella of Student Services, and I'm going to spotlight just a few of those programs and services that are in that list. So the first, school counselors, they're an integral part of our school team and help students with healthy goals, mindsets, and behaviors. The American School Counseling Association advocates for school counselors and identifies 3 areas of service in looking at academics, career exploration, and those social emotional development pieces. The focus areas aim to address the needs of the whole child and in their development process. School counselors work both preventative and in responsive ways to support kindergarten through 12th grade in our school districts, and services provided by school counselors may include any of the following on this list. Some of those might be advisement and evaluation for academic planning purposes, coordination of student orientation programs, back to school nights, provide classroom lessons based on emotional national and state standards, develop programming that is developmentally appropriate based on identifying needs through data, coordination of our universal screener process, collaboration with teachers and administrators, our MTSS teams, they sit on all those teams to support students, provide short-term individual or small group counseling services, and of course, referrals to families and students for long-term support. The American School Counselor Association recommends caseloads student to staff ratios be 250 students to 1 school counselor. National average reported by ASCA from the 2022-2023 school year show that national average is 385 to 1. And just looking at our Power School data and what's being reported in our school, shown here are our current school counselor to staff ratios. Highlighted are those areas where we are above those recommended average from the American School Counselor Association. Just to highlight, because State High is a little bit differently when we kind of look at school counseling. School counselors at State High are divided by alphabet and are partner together to form CAT teams. This high school office has 8 counselors and 1 school counseling coordinator. The coordinator provides leadership, advocacy, and support for secondary counselors and facilitates communication between counselors and administration. The coordinator also serves as a point of contact for faculty and staff within the building and maintains a small caseload primarily supporting our English language learner students. Just to give you some statistics from the 22-2023 school year, the high school counseling office keeps a Google form for students checking into the office. And last school year, grades 10 to 12, 14,343 students checked into the school counseling office. And in the 9th grade office, 4,775. So you can see just the number of referrals, and that probably doesn't even count the kids that come in for immediate response to crisis. Moving on to our family and community engagement team. This team works really closely with our students and families to develop and maintain positive relationships between members of our school district and outside agency. The home and school visitor is a member of our FACE team and plays a key role in supporting our families. Working with the school district and family, the focus of the homeschool visitor is to really better those home and school partnerships. The home school visitor provides a wide range of services that include connecting parents to school personnel, collaborating with school staff, community agencies, parents, and students, providing outreach, referrals to appropriate school and community resources. They also work with our truancy and attendance interventions, and they also serve on school-based teams such as with our district social workers, MTSS, and school-based mental health supports. We also have 3 licensed social workers within our district. Our social workers bring a unique set of skills and knowledge to support our students' basic needs, mental health, and behavioral concerns. They provide academic and classroom support. Social workers consult with teachers, parents, administrators, and they are members of our MTSS teams as well as our school-based mental health team. In addition to these services, our social workers and our FACE team really understand the challenges our families are facing. And this is just kind of an overview of what they provide. Those challenges may include financial hardships, physical ailments, and along with mental health concerns. Families that need help can complete our family needs assessment that's available through all of our counselors that's put out to our district. It's also available on our website. This form addresses the following needs of food, housing, community resources, food bank referrals, and basic needs. And so just want to give you some numbers. To date, our FACE team has completed 36 needs assessments, 7 food bank referrals, 19 home visits, 16 family contacts with no needs assessments completed. Last school year, they completed 221 needs assessments, 4,413 pounds of food were given out through our Helping Hands food pantry. 42 food bank referrals were created, and 136 holiday meals were given out. Shown here is our ratio, and so this is our district number as a whole. We are at 6,848 students, 1 homeschool visitor, and 3 social workers that work district-wide. Our school-based mental health team has a long history in providing school-based mental health services. The Commonwealth of Pennsylvania shares that the purpose of school-based health is to bring together schools, county mental health agencies, community resources, and to provide a continuum of services that meet the needs of our students' families within the district. SCASD provides comprehensive mental health services that are strength-based, developmentally appropriate, data-driven, youth-guided, and family-focused. The purpose of school-based mental health services within our district is to provide supplemental mental health services for a student who is struggling at school when the family is unable to otherwise obtain services in the community. Any student seeking school-based mental health services must be facing barriers to outside support and also finding that their mental health is impacting their academic needs. Our SCASD has an internal mental health professionals that include licensed professional counselors, social workers, and coaches. Services are short-term, and clinicians work to connect our clients or students with outside support. So within Center County, I reached out to some other school districts. We are the only school district within Center County that actually hired licensed professional counselors to provide mental health to our students. We have 3 mental health counselors district-wide. In addition to these clinicians, we also partner with Penn State University with the HER Clinic as well as Psych Clinic. This year from the HER Clinic, we will have 1 doctoral level GA. We'll have 3 interns to provide support to our middle and high schools. With the Psych Clinic, we do have a doctoral student that will be working with our middle school as well as our MTSS teams at the middle school. And we also have 3 doctoral level Psych Clinic interns that are available to provide level 2 and level 3 mental health support to our students through our school-based mental health team. As part of our approach to school-based mental health, as I said, we're composed of district leaders of student services, special education, internal clinicians, our FACE team members, contracted mental health providers, and county mental health agencies that meet weekly throughout the school year. The purpose of this team is to provide consultation and connect students with services and support. Listed here are just a few of the members that make up that team weekly. And we also have those teams that come through MTSS and go to our school-based mental health team. In addition to the services highlighted, SCASD students are provided access to social emotional learning and mental health support delivered through Tier 1 and Tier 2 interventions. SCASD provides curriculums and supports across our district. These include the following. Second step, lessons are delivered in elementary schools to help students build social emotional skills. Character Strong, that was approved this year, is evidence-based multi-tiered solutions to support the whole child with the aim to improve behavior, increase safety, and support mental health. Tier 1 curriculum will be implemented this school year in grades 6 through 8, and Tier 2 solutions are available for kindergarten through 12th grade. Health and PE curriculums that focus on mental and emotional wellness, and partnerships with Jana Marie to provide students with QPR training and team mental health and first aid training to middle and high school students. Additional supports include cultural responsive practices, restorative practice, district-wide PBIS, I know the high school presented on this, suicide awareness training, are safe to say, MTSS teams, these are developed at every single building and meet weekly that include administrators, counselors, school psychologists, teachers, social workers, and school-based mental health team members to address the needs of our students. I'd like to add our school psychologists, though they're not focused on this presentation, they are really key players in our school-based mental health teams as well as our MTSS teams. They help to develop best practices and really support the whole child when we're looking at that. So our school-based mental health teams, Mental Health Matters Club, and of course our Mental Health Summit. Provided are a list of organizations we partner with throughout the school year, and I want to share, just highlight 2 of our partners that we work significantly with, the first being the Jana Marie Foundation. They're connected with our schools to offer services to students, families, and staff. A few of the services include teen mental health first aid, which was offered this fall to all of our 9th grade students, QPR training for 8th grade students, involvement with activities at the high school during suicide prevention week. They're at our back to school nights. They meet with transition groups. They provide faculty and staff training, which our October 3rd training coming up is going to be, they're going to be providing services to our middle school and our high school staff. And then also providing parents sessions for parents. Dr. Peter Montminy has worked closely with our district and is one of the founding members of our school-based mental health team. And so he sits on all of our elementary MTSS meetings to provide consultations and services to help support our teams and students. Dr. Montminy has also led professional development within our district. to our faculty and staff that includes trauma-skilled, informed skills, as well as mindfulness. We are truly grateful to all of these partnerships, and we really could not do our work without them. As we move forward, we've discussed a lot of things over the district. We've heard a lot of comment. And one of my favorite Maya Angelou quotes is that when you know better, you do better. And so I think as we kind of hear about those things, we can always strive to kind of think through like what can we put in place to really support our mental health and our student services. So one of the things moving forward, just want to include here, and this is just a small list, but hopefully this list will grow as we move throughout the school year. The first is our SCASD Mindfulness Connection newsletter. You probably saw that come out earlier this month, working with Chris Rosenblum and Emil Bark to really highlight our student services and the great work we're doing within our school in regards to mental health supports. The first highlighted was our Mental Health Matters Club and what they were doing at the high school with Suicide Prevention Week. So each feature will be, each newsletter will come out monthly and have a program feature. It will talk about what the program is, what those supports office program, our services are, and then offer links to families, connecting them to resources within our community and within our school district. We're also teaming up with Jana Marie Foundation to bring back the Straight Talk series. This program will be under a new name, Community Conversations for People Who Care About Kids. And it will be scheduled monthly. The program will be held in person and then will also be recorded and available through CNET. Our first community conversation was held this past Wednesday at Mount Nittany Middle School, and it was on resiliency, compassion. Because we recognize mental health is a larger community conversation, I'm also working with Elizabeth Siegelman Center for Alternative Community Justice and Chalivia Zula, the Director of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging with the Borough of State College, to plan a community conversation event around mental health supports within State College. This event will include a panel discussion about mental health in the schools and the community as a larger conversation. This currently is in the planning stages, and we hope to present that in the spring, and fingers crossed we will have access to the State Theater for that. Last year, our high school had a mental health summit, and the mental health summit focused on student mental health and support within the high school, and just offered a lot of great fun and activities for high school students, and we'd really like to expand this district-wide, and so working with the administrative team to see how we can do that from a K-12 lens. And then also expanding our partnerships. So this past week, we met with the Cook Center for Human Connections. The mission of the Cook Center is to bring together organizations, programs, and products to prevent suicide, provide mental health support, and enhance connections vital for people to thrive. And so we just want to really open the floor up to what is out there and what services and programs may be available. And finally, I just want to kind of end on the external review that we discussed tonight. Reviewing our programs and service and systems will help to identify our strengths and challenges. And I really think that's what we're all like hoping for. Like, I think we have a lot of good strengths, but I think there's all challenges, and that's where you kind of put those systems in place to make sure that we're working all together. So I hope the recommendation will really help us develop a comprehensive plan to move forward. And with that, questions? Yeah.
So I want to touch base. I know we moved over to Power School this year, right? And I want to see with all of these programs we have in place and how many staff and teachers our kids interact with each and every day. How is Power School helping us build a more a picture of what's going on with our students in school every day, right? So every year you go in and you meet the new teacher, you have to explain what may or may not have happened in the previous year or what support your child may need. Are we utilizing Power School to its full capabilities so that can go with the child, whether they go to a different school, middle school, high school, so on and so forth? If a parent requests a timeline, it can easily be pulled because everybody that's come in contact with that child has remarked in there or whatever Power School allows them to do.
Yeah, so Power School, I've worked with Power School for over 20 years, and so there's a lot of features with the Power School that provides like a record and a history. And so if your child moves from, Park Forest to Delta or wherever they go, it kind of lands with them. There's log entries. We're exploring MTSS modules that will also that data. So we talk about test data, we talk about MTSS, what type of tier supports and all those kind of things. That's all going to be built out. We're also looking at special programs modules that like students with IEPs or 504 gifted education. Also that is going to be flagged, and teachers and staff should have access to those things. So really it's a system that addresses I think our needs for looking at the whole child. And I don't know if you've been on the MTSS discussions in regards to what those modules might like pair out.
Yeah, I've not been part of those conversations. It is new, but I would say Power School, Stephanie has experience from a prior district. But the modules that we sign up for, probably a little bit too early to tell the full capability of what they can and can't do, but there's for sure a system to track many different ways. As far as a timeline, I'm not sure I can comment on that as far as being able to pull a timeline.
Yeah, I'd love to, at some point, if you could come back to another meeting and help us understand if a counselor has an interaction with a child, if that could be recorded in Power School at some point. I know we've discussed as a board before getting better tracking for students' visit to counselors and so on and so forth. So that'd be great if we already have that program, that system in place, if that's a place that could house that data for us.
Yeah, I think we can definitely explore like what the possibilities are within Power School and like what are areas. I mean, I know we can see just historically, you can see grades from kindergarten all the way up through 12th grade. Like it will track even all of that data, like historical academic data, but what you're asking for, just making sure that, you know, we can definitely follow up with that.
Yeah, it probably helps us identify patterns with children too, positive and otherwise. So.
And the MTSS modules might also help with that too, like because we're talking about the whole student, not just academic supports, but
right.
how we can support them social emotionally too.
Absolutely. Thanks.
I know one of the big benefits when we first went over to at least finally getting over to a student information system was just having IEPs and 504s attached to student profiles was a big leap forward, which we actually didn't make. It's not that, unfortunately was not long ago due to our struggles to get to a central warehoused information system. So, yeah.
So just a couple of, at least one question and maybe a request. What do you use as outcome data to determine whether what you're doing is effective?
With the school-based mental health, I mean, I think the PACE data, what Jean presented in June, like will definitely like bring out some outcome, but I think there's definitely things we can also use. We also have the universal screener that we have in the fall and the spring. So students identified in the fall might be identified to go into groups or counseling services, so that spring data can also be used to kind of reflect is the recommendation or the practice working.
Okay. And one of the things that I had kind of requested before, and when Jean was here also, I always want to know, like, what do the kids feel is effective? What do the kids feel is working or not working? And maybe what are the areas that we could grow or change in that the kids might be able to identify that you don't see with the PACE survey, for instance? So my recommendation or request would be that we consider including on the new initiatives and partnerships a process for getting that student feedback through focus groups, through, you know, not necessarily just community forums, but a way for the students, really at all levels, but I would say particularly the middle level now that we've been talking so much about it, to give us feedback about what's working and what's not, because I think you can get a lot out of the surveys, but you don't always know what a 3.8 out of 5 means. Whereas if they can tell you, this is how I feel, this is why I think this doesn't work, or these were my experiences, we might find other ways that we can improve what we want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. And hopefully even going through the review process, they might offer suggestion and recommendations for how to do that with students and like really pull that data. I know that even looking at from like a PACE data, like should we include other grade levels to like just have more general feedback and looking at specific questions.
Okay, thanks.
Other questions? Debbie?
I want to say thank you for putting this together. I think I've realized from this presentation at least one reason why you speak so fast and Jean Knaus always spoke so fast, and that's because all of our student services professionals do so much. And so you're trying to tell us a lot of information in a short period of time.
I'm sorry.
You're totally fine. We're used to it.
Okay.
But my point was to not be negative about speaking fast, but to be positive about how much you're doing and how much the professionals that work for us in the schools are doing for our students and who have our students' needs at heart. And so I want to be appreciative of that. One question I did have, or just one thing I wanted to point out, and I meant to send an email earlier today and life got away. But just looking at our counselor to student ratios at the elementary level, I wanted to point out to the community, if they didn't put it together, and I had to go back and kind of relook, some of the schools that have the highest counselor to student ratio are in fact the elementary schools where we have put in place an elementary dean. And I'm hopeful that the elementary dean position can help to offset that overload. But to Amy's point about resources and what do we need to think about for the future, those numbers give me some pause and make me wonder. I don't even know if it's possible to share a counselor between two schools, right? Like we're above the recommendation, but not super high.
We have done it in the past when at one point in time, we did not have a counselor housed at every building. Okay. And there was at our smaller schools like Coral, and it was maybe it was Ferguson, I can't recall which one, they were split between the two.
So, and I can imagine there are difficulties with that, but anyway, I'm just thinking, I know we have other needs. I'm not saying that's necessarily where we would go, but that's one thing that kind of spoke to me out of this presentation that makes me wonder if that's a need that will rise to the top in the budgetary cycle. So thank you.
Yeah, I want to reiterate your thoughts about the tremendous work that staff does. You mentioned Peter Montminy, and in some conversations I've had with him, he's really called attention to me that we are very fortunate in our district to be doing so much as we are. Not to say that we can't do more or that we don't care about doing more, but it's unfortunate that there are a lot of struggles by a lot of districts who simply don't have the resources to even put some of these types of things in place. It's a big discussion we had at a recent legislative meet and greet event with some state legislators from the Education Committee in the House, and we talked a little bit about funding from the state for mental health supports and how critical that is. And while we're grateful for the $100 million that was repeated this year in the budget cycle for mental health supports, it doesn't go very far when you divide it across 500 districts, and you also restrict some of it to specific types of safety things like cameras and doors, which are equally important, but don't fulfill some of our mental health needs. So yeah, it's a hard balance that we strike between all of those constraints and stressors, but I do appreciate so much the work that our staff put in and day out. Are there other questions, or you want to add something?
I just want to say that these are conversations that we have had as superintendents to the Jesse Topper, the representative and chair of the Education Committee. The mere fact that they have reduced the mental health budget and safety budget by $50 million in the latest state budget, and the need for resources, especially in those areas. They have, the Superintendents Association has encouraged us to continue our advocacy in that area with our boards being, the forefront in the advocacy of that.
That's great, because apparently he is the minority chair of the committee, and the meeting that I was at was the majority chair. So we've hit up both of them of the importance of that funding. And that was a meeting with also a lot of other districts. Other questions for Stephanie? Okay, thanks for how complete this is. I think this will be a really helpful resource to point community members to when we talk about like what are our efforts involved, at least at this point in time. So thank you so much. All right, that concludes our information reports for this evening. Last up on our agenda is board reports. a chance for board members to share updates from their committee initiatives. So first up, we have the intermediate unit. Anne, have you had a meeting?
We're meeting tomorrow.
It always seems to be that way. I have the SCASD Education Foundation liaison. We actually had quite a busy meeting at the last meeting. We went through a lot of topics. We had Stephanie actually join us to share some of the needs regarding the My Mental Health Fund and some ways that the foundation could assist the district in funding some of these types of initiatives. Like, for one example, is it Goggle or Gaggle, Stephanie? It's Gaggle. So Gaggle's a resource that we use to help connect multilingual or bilingual or other linguals ELL students to counseling in their native language. And that's something that the foundation has been helping ensure that we can fund and provide. We also talked a lot about the upcoming 10-year anniversary of the Education Foundation, along with some teacher grants that are on applications that have just been going on. We talked about the Maroon and Gray event in the spring, some budget issues, and there was one more thing I wanted to add. I'm peeking at the agenda. It escapes me, so perhaps I've already covered it. But yeah, it was quite a busy meeting, and we talked a lot about ways to gather. Actually, a big topic was about tracking and following data and how to move forward. Oh, the one thing I wanted to mention is the foundation will be coming forward to the board in October to present their annual report findings, annual update. So that'll be coming forward. We discussed that as well. Next on our list, Carlene, we have CTC Local Advisory Committee. Or is that you and
I
Aaron?
shall give this update, yeah. We had a meeting on the 13th, Friday the 13th. And primarily what we talked about was the structure of the local advisory committee, as well as we got some staffing updates, some program updates. Went over the NOCDIAN assessment summary from last year. The one comment that I would make is really for anybody who's still listening at 10:20. The LAC is always looking for new members, as are the OACs, and in particular, the LAC, the Local Advisory Committee, is always looking for people in industry in particular, not necessarily connected to the university, but we're open to having new people, and we're still looking for a chair. So if you're interested, email Ben Morden.
Great. So then we'll move on to Citizens Advisory Committee liaison reports. Carlene, this athletics.
No.
No, I haven't met.
No, we did meet, but I missed the meeting, so I'm going to get the updates.
That's
so I
fine.
apologize, and I will report it next meeting.
It's hard to make every single meeting, so understandable. I've missed some of the ed meetings too, foundation meetings as well. Facilities, Gretchen, have you had a meeting? No, because we've been having so many community forums
Yeah,
and
the
steering
next
committee.
one is, I think, October 17th.
Okay.
So it's a little ways off. If I can, on Wednesday, this is like not a Citizens Advisory Committee, but the next meeting of the Solar Power Working Group is this Wednesday at 9 a.m.
Okay, that's good
And
information.
that's where we
to
will
share.
have all
The contracts.
like all the docs that we're supposed to have in order that should be on
soon
our next agenda and the agendas of all the other organizations in October.
Awesome. That's helpful to share. Thank you. Finance, Deb and Aaron, have you guys started having CAC meetings as yet?
Yeah, so our last meeting was earlier in September. Just real briefly, we talked a preview of capital financing options, which I'm fairly positive is on our agenda for the board for the 30th. So that's coming. So there was a little preview there. A very quick preview of budgetary planning, state budget update. We're going to be soon doing an RFP for banking and underwriter, just to make sure that we're using the right person. We've had the same person for a while, so we're going to go out and make sure that it's there's not somebody better in the community. There was a district-wide facility master plan update, which we've already had, and a PPA update. So I think things that we've already covered in other ways.
Okay. School health and safety. I know that not yet. I know Stephanie's still getting settled and things like that. And technology.
Yeah, we had a meeting, a couple of us. The primary topic of that meeting, we had the PA National Guard, it was, correct, Aaron, do a cybersecurity audit of the district. There were some interesting findings that I believe we're going to present at the next, I think it's the next board meeting that Justin was presenting that. Is that correct?
I think he said that, yeah.
Yeah.
Teehee preview, they managed to crack like 85% of the passwords in the district
Yep.
within, I don't know, 10 minutes.
Yep.
So, yeah.
It's pretty interesting data. CJ's like,
I turned on two-factor authentication this week, so.
yes,
Just saying.
staff, turn on two-factor authentication, please.
Thank you very much for that. Anything else for the good of the order regarding committees? Okay, then that concludes our agenda for this evening. Looking ahead to future agendas, we have Monday, September 30th. We have an Action 34 hearing for Mount Nittany Elementary additions and renovations. That'll be at 6 p.m. here at Panorama Village. Monday, September 30th. We're not done yet. We're not adjourned. If I have to do this, you have to listen. Monday, September 30th, Committee of the Whole, regular board meeting, 7 p.m., Panorama Village. Tuesday, October 15th, Policy Development Committee, that's at 1:30 here, and potentially facilities on the 17th. I don't have that for sure, but check our website or our calendar. And Monday, October 21st is the regular board meeting. That'll be 7 p.m. here in Panorama Village. And with that, I will allow you to go and adjourn the meeting of the State College Area School District Board of Directors. Have a good evening.